flawed. I guess that's the, best, that's the nicest thing I can say about it, right? The statement itself was flawed, and it basically put the blame on the pro-Palestinian activists and the advocates and the people that were dominated, people who were arrested for advancing this cause, for speaking truth to power, punished relentlessly for it, right? She basically said, oh, you're showing these atrocities. It's like, and it's, making people feel bad. And it also hurt the Democratic Party's chances of winning. It was this ridiculous statement. And the timing of it was so bad. The timing of it was so bad. Like, if she had just kept quiet, she probably would not have received so much backlash. But not only did she, come out with this ridiculous statement, she did it right before there was like unlimited coverage on Israel doing a famine and murdering Palestinian children in a way that was impossible to ignore. So I think, content creators like this, I myself am not, outside of this group either. Nobody likes to be yelled at. Nobody likes to be told that they're wrong, right? And she was inundated with unlimited statements about how wrong she was and how much of a genocidaire she was, and that probably hardened her position. And she, for some weird reason, decided that I was like the primary critic of her statement, I think. Yeah, it is also because of this as well, I think, maybe. I don't know. Like her being her doing something with Hillary Rodham Clinton. She thinks you're a community harasser, not understanding that you share similar audiences. Yeah, it's almost like an Ethan Klein moment, right? It's an Ethan Klein thing where it's like, oh, it can't be my own statements being reflected on by my own community that I've cultivated, many of which are anti-Zionist, and on the side of truth and justice here, on the side of the Palestinians, getting mad at me. It must be some outsider that's pushing them to criticize me. Not comparing Natalie to Ethan, please. It's true, though. They're aligned on this. They're aligned on this issue. I say this as someone who's collaborated with her, who's hung out with her, who was shocked by her position on the issue of Israel to begin with. Like, I was pretty open about it. And my commentary on her statement was much nicer, much nicer than many others. My expectation was that she would be the last person to do this because she's actually smart. Like, it was genuinely a surprise because Ethan Klein is, like, he doesn't know shit about politics. He's just responding to whatever he sees on his timeline, whatever is presented to him in his subreddit, oftentimes by sex pestiny Redditors that LARP as though they are H3 fans, right? She thinks you're a RevCom, so I don't think she knows that much. Wait, what? You just gave him material for his next 6-hour podcast, buddy? Okay, whatever. I don't give a shit. What's he gonna do? Complain about? Is he gonna cancel Ezra Klein now? King Lib. He's gonna be like, Ezra Klein, you're canceled. You're the king of anti-Semite. You got sucked into Hassan's dangerous web of lies, like he did with Sam Cedar. Ezra Klein, another Jew hater. We must cancel our New York Times subscriptions, guys. Like, is that what he's going to do? Okay. Good luck. What is this? Hen Mazik? He is actually, here's his talking points. It's a comforting notion that if we just allow people to spread lies and hate about our brothers and sisters in Israel, they'll hate Jews in the diaspora a little less. But the reality is hate, yes, including that hate that calls for the dissolution of the world's one Jewish state and the home of half a Jews living, has little to do with our actions. Read my take on Ezra Klein's latest op-ed on Hassan Piker on my Substack. It's so funny to read this article or to read this sentiment as anything but if you give equality to all that live in the land that Israel currently occupies and dominates, you want another Holocaust to happen. Okay? It's an unbelievably racist thing to say. And most people don't even comprehend how unbelievably racist it is. We just take it for granted. This is the same exact principle that whites in South Africa presented, where they were like, what, we can't have a white ethno state? What are you talking about? A white dominated ethno state? You just want us to die, huh? Like little old Rhodesia standing alone in the entire continent of Africa can't even have it. You know, it's so stupid. So many black countries. Why can't there be a white one in the continent of Africa? You know, the photo he's using. Yeah, he's trying to say that like Ezra Klein wants to me. It's insane. God damn it, dude. It's unbearable seeing this guy hit bar for bar the that I would be saying in this situation. He is now the voice of reason. Worst guy to put as the voice of reason, by the way. There's not much to analyze about base MAGA. They're just a personality cult. Trump could call feces his favorite dinner, and these people would eat it for free. It's true. A lot of people, especially on the left, put a lot of stock in seeing this man as a cipher for what MAGA believed, and as a glimpse into its future, should be reevaluating things, to say the very least. This is about Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, who saw a 47 point dip in his approvals because as Trump crushed Tucker Carlson's audience changed. So like, this is important. This is important to identify because it kind of corresponds to my theory, right? What I've been saying about Tucker Carlson is that he no longer actually is the MAGA whisperer necessarily, but he actually has been able to generate a lot of excitement and a lot of new eyeballs from independents, people that are not American, that are not being polled, and Democrats, those on the left, non-voters. I think that is what Tucker Carlson is winning big in. Trump's approval will crash once he's a lame duck. The distance he's creating for himself now will pay off later. I agree. I think Tucker Carlson is positioning himself like this for the future, either for a future run where he runs for presidency, or a future where he can take the credibility that he has now established as an anti-Zionist, as an anti-Israel guy, anti-war guy, and he certainly has that credibility now, for the record, and lend that credibility to whichever candidate he thinks will best advance his base desires, white nativism, and things like that. So even if he himself doesn't run for president, he could absolutely take the credibility that he has and lend it to a J.D. Vance, for example. There's a lot of delusion among MAGA about just how unpopular he is. Once they lose the House and Senate, he has no chance of staying influential or power. It'll be over. That's what happened with Bush.
You tried to persuade Donald Trump not to go to war with Iran. You met him 3 times in the run-up to February the 28th, and you spoke to him on the phone multiple times. Donald Trump now says because of this action that he has taken, the US and the American people are safer. Is he wrong?
Well, of course, that's an absurd statement. He doesn't believe it, I don't think. No, of course not. I mean, we were told after the 12-day war in June that the United States had eliminated Iran's nuclear program, and then we were told in February that somehow that nuclear program had not only been resurrected, but it had been paired with ICBMs.
You don't think the stink of Iraq won't follow him? No. If it followed him, it would follow him currently. As I already said, he has established credibility as the anti-war voice in the country. He is one of the most prominent anti-war voices in this country right now. I would say a lot more prominent than your boy. Okay? Because at the end of the day, mainstream media also loves people who were already in mainstream media. So Tucker Carlson has that backing. A lot of people don't remember that far back anyway, but Tucker Carlson is probably one of the most prominent anti-war, one of the most prominent critics of Israel in this country right now.
That could threaten continental United States. I mean, the whole thing is a fantasy. The United States went to war in Iran in order to effect regime change, to throw out the people who ran the country and collapse it at the behest and then the demand of Israel. And that,
remember, Democrats love crossover appeal, okay? What they perceive as crossover appeal, which Tucker Carlson may or may not have in this moment, is enough for Democrats to not actually shit on Tucker Carlson with anywhere near the same the same severity as someone like myself, right? A lot of centrist Democrats both align with some of Tucker Carlson's ridiculous worldview, ridiculous attitudes around the economy. They see him as a mainstream figure with crossover appeal. He might not have that crossover appeal right now, but he probably will later down the line when the Republicans are forced to reckon with how devastating this war was. They should for criticizing Israel, but I'm telling you, it's the Republicans that on him. It's the Republicans that attack him first and foremost. But overall, I think he gets less abuse from centrist Democrats. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think Jake Tapper and Dana Bash have done extensive panels on Tucker Carlson's anti-Semitism. They've done it for Nick Fuentes, but I don't think they've done it for Tucker Carlson.
That's a demand the Israelis have made of the U.S. government for decades, and President Trump.
What would you say who the most prominent anti-Israel critic is? It's probably Tucker Carlson right now in the country. I'm up there too, for sure, but I think it's Tucker Carlson.
Trump fell for it, did it. And I think he recognized immediately that it was a mistake and that it's very hard to extricate yourself from a war like this once it has begun. And I think the net effect, and the president himself has said this, is at best.
You say Candace, but I think Candace's motion is like a little bit base boosted by bots. I would say it's probably Tucker Carlson. Out of like the political commentariat, I would say Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, myself. Yeah, I don't know who else. I mean, I guess like Nick Fuentes too, unfortunately. I mean, notice something about the top critics of Israel? Yeah, Mehdi Hassan as well, for sure.
To leave the regime in place, give that regime control over commodities that flow through the strait.
But for the Breaking Points crew as well, for every like Breaking Points, Mehdi Hassan, myself, there is like 8 Republicans. Like there's a Dave Smith, right? There's a Tucker Carlson, there's a Candace Owens, there's a Nick Fuentes. Like there are a lot. But you think Candace is boosted and not Nick? Oh, I think Nick is boosted too. I don't think Tucker Carlson is boosted. I think Tucker Carlson has legitimate developing nations in his audience. Like I think he's got the Ummah on his side. That's what I think is like boosting his visibility a lot.
It's at the eastern end of the Persian Gulf, in effect to make Iran much more powerful than it was on February 27th, the day before the war began.
On that subject of being more powerful, I mean, you will know that the president has said, because
you were at the Zoran rally today? We might be at Zoran's 100-day rally, but we still got to clock in. Nice. Don't let New York Post hear this. They'll write a hit piece on me and Zoran spiritually at the Zoran rally. Sneeko is another prominent critic of Israel. A lot of those like the weird like manosphere guys are those I would consider to be prominent critics of Israel as well.
because of me, Iran will now.
Did you watch the Newsman segment on you? They said you are fundamentally evil to the core. You mean Newsmax? Would you go on the Sean Ryan show? Absolutely. Absolutely, I would.
Never have a
But I'm not an operator, so I don't know. I don't know why they would have me on. You know what I mean?
nuclear weapon. There will be no enrichment of uranium, and we will dig up and remove all the deeply buried nuclear dust. Pete Hegseth said epic fury has decimated Iran's military and rendered it combat ineffective for years to come. You don't believe that? They're lying?
Well, of course, it's not true. And it also reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of...
Why is the BBC anchor defending CENTCOM? Like at a time when the British state's position on Trump is that he's awful, the British government is weirdly just leaning into the CENTCOM statements coming in, and they're just like, what do you think they're lying?
Iran's power.
Yes.
Iran is not primarily a military power, though it's turned out to be much more effective than anyone thought. Iran is an economic power. Iran has the power to halt a critical supply chain, maybe the single most critical supply chain in the global economy, which is shipping out of the Persian Gulf. And it retains that power because of its geography. And it's always had that power. It just hasn't exercised it until now. And so not understanding that allows you to enter into an engagement like this with the belief that you can beat them, sink their navy, destroy their air force, degrade their missile capacity, and you will somehow win. But of course, the opposite is true. There is no way out at this point from that fundamental reality. If the United States were to eliminate the central government in Tehran, it wouldn't open the strait. The strait could be closed by piracy. In fact, you need a central government in Tehran to keep the strait open. And we know that from the Houthis, who are able to close the Red Sea. And years, many years of war with the Gulf states, briefly with the United States, have not ended the Houthis' ability to close access to the Red Sea. They have it as of right now. So this is an asymmetrical problem. It doesn't matter how many aircraft carriers you have. You still can't prevent other people, your enemies in this case, from closing shipping lanes. It can be done with mines. Like this whole thing, this whole problem is very easy to understand, and you would have to be either not very bright or under immense pressure from another country in order to start a war like this. And the latter is true. We did this because of pressure from Israel. Now, how exactly did they exert that pressure? That's not entirely clear, but we're going to have to find out. I think we have an obligation to find out, and because we can't be a sovereign country under these circumstances, and we're not a sovereign country at this point.
Why am I agreeing with Tucker Carlson? No, Tucker Carlson is agreeing with you. Also, the other side of the story is that he knows you'll agree with him. That's why he's saying this stuff.
And obviously Donald Trump would push right back on that. And you have been, until now really, a huge supporter of his. You wanted him elected, obviously,
yes,
for a second term. Have you completely fallen out with him over this war then?
Well, I haven't fallen out with him. I mean, I've known him for decades. I've always liked him. And I think anyone who spent time with him likes him. I feel sorry for him, as I do for all slaves. He is not free in this moment at all to do what he thinks is.
That's dude. I mean, he's got bars when he wants to, man. It's up. He does have I think he literally has like a Muslim hypnosis capability, though. I don't know if I'm just like weak to it, but the way he cooks sometimes, I'm like, God damn it, dude. So annoying.
Best for himself or his country.
What do you mean?
No, he's not free. And we learned that yesterday when Donald Trump announced a ceasefire, clearly with relief, and made its terms or most of its terms public. And then that ceasefire ended within 2 hours because Israel intentionally violated the terms by attacking not just southern Lebanon, but the city of Beirut.
So are you saying he's a slave to Benjamin Netanyahu?
So I don't think it's as simple as he's under the control of Netanyahu. But, you know, you could summarize it that way and you wouldn't be totally inaccurate. And again, we know this because the single biggest mistake Trump or...
For the record, this take would have been endlessly discussed even like a year ago, right? Is it anti-Semitic? What's up with this anti-Semitism, right? What's up with this anti-Semitism? And even Jay Mershon is saying, how is anti-Semitism a bar? Tucker said he's a slave to Israel. And you know his ass is saying he's a slave to Jews. Here's why this is no longer even in dispute. Maggie Haberman made it so that people understand with her reporting on the New York Times and then the subsequent CBS reporting that came out that said Benjamin Netanyahu called up Donald Trump to tell him that the ceasefire was not happening and that he was going to bomb Lebanon. And then, last but not least, the SNL jokesters making that exact same joke has officially solidified that this position is now not only the majority position, but it's also one that is appropriate to take by liberals. Because if SNL is making that joke, think about the way SNL dealt with like Israel. Think about the way that SNL dealt with Israel and the issue of Israel. They were very rarely speaking out against it. Now Strange says, Netanyahu's brought enormous moral and cultural ignominy down on Israel in large ways and small.
Ultimately, that decision comes down to the man controlling our military, Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's it. That's the SNL joke. That means that what's his face signed off on this. Lorne Michaels signed off on this. This is peak liberalism. Okay, this is why do we watch SNL or used to watch SNL on SNL Sundays? We used to watch it because we wanted to understand where the moral compass of liberalism was, right? What they were laughing at, what they were looking at, what they were thinking. Since that New York Times reporting for Maggie Haberman that I still suspect JD Vance leaked, for the record, because it was just like such deep access. Like someone in that room straight up said everything to Maggie Haberman. And my assumption is there's two characters in that room that are that have most to gain from presenting themselves as being against or being cautious against like waging war with Iran. And it's Marco Rubio and it's JD Vance. And it's most likely JD Vance, considering that JD Vance has already been sending out feelers over and over again. This also corresponds to Donald Trump sending JD Vance after Iran demand JD Vance go to this meeting. But that reporting was huge, especially from the New York Times. And now SNL's making jokes like this. It's undeniable that Donald Trump is servile to the needs of Israel and is absolutely going along with whatever Benjamin Netanyahu wants. Now, if we're going to look at why that's the case, I don't know. I genuinely don't know, because it's so far beyond a divergence at this point. It's so far beyond, like, Israel's ultimate goals here with Iran are totally separate from America, and it's actually harming the United States of America's position around the globe, that it doesn't make sense. It's no longer financial gain. It's no longer these interests coalescing, and now it's just it has to be something separate. I don't know what it is.
Any American president in my lifetime has made was going to war with Iran in an effort to change its regime. It didn't work. It was obviously a mistake immediately. Trump understood it was a mistake immediately, and he tried to get out of it this week and announced we were getting out of it, and the Israelis prevented us from getting out of it. So that's the clearest possible example.
Right.
They didn't allow it, therefore they're in charge.
You will know that people, including the Vice President J.D. Vance, say things like, look, ceasefires are always messy to start with, give it a few days, it'll settle down. Let me move on, because I want to ask you about the British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was criticised by the US President.
Sir Keir Starmer.
He said, this is not Winston Churchill we're dealing with.
Literally less than Trump, which is unbelievable, because Keir Starmer is double stuffed. Keir Starmer is not only cucked by Trump, but if Trump is cucked by Israel, then Keir Starmer is cucked by both. And in this circumstance, he actually is in a better position overall by just simply opposing Trump.
Do you think Keir Starmer has made the right calls in this war?
I don't think Keir Starmer makes any calls about anything. I mean, Keir Starmer's not.
Well, he did make a call about this.
Obviously. Right. Okay. No, Keir Starmer is every bit as enslaved as Donald Trump is. It is illegal. It is a crime for which you can be arrested in Britain right now, criticizing Israel. If you say you're for Palestine action, you can be arrested. A lot of people have been arrested. So in other words, it is not legal in Britain to criticize another country. And that tells you about Britain's sovereignty. It doesn't have any. Its prime minister has no.
Oh, she doesn't like that.
No sovereignty.
Mr.
Those are
Colson,
facts. I have family
that is
there.
not true. And in terms of this war, I'm specifically asking.
Wait, I'm sorry. What is not true about that? Have people not been arrested in Britain for criticizing Israel? They certainly have been. There's videotape of it.
If I may, Palestine Action is a proscribed group. It is banned. Therefore, people have been arrested.
Why is it banned?
That is correct.
Why is it banned?
I'm asking you a question specifically about Keir Starmer and the decisions
because the Israeli government wanted it banned.
And you will know that on February the 28th, if I may, on February the 28th, which was the day the US launched its action, the British Prime Minister told the country that he was not joining with the US because he thought it was illegal and that there was no viable plan. So clearly he made a sovereign decision, which he said was in the interests of the country. And I'm asking you, do you think he made the right call there?
Any government that bans criticism of a foreign government is not sovereign. The British government has banned criticism of Israel, therefore it's not sovereign. It's acting on behalf of another country to the detriment of its own citizens. So let's just be really clear about that.
The British government
Britain
has
is not a sovereign
banned
country.
criticism of the Israeli government.
It certainly has, by banning Palestine Action, which has nothing to do with Britain at all, or its
God damn it, dude. It's unbearable seeing this guy hit bar for bar the shit that I would be saying in this situation. And I don't even know what his guiding, I have an idea of what his guiding principles are, including, but not limited to, potentially anti-Semitic opinions. But it doesn't even matter at this point because he's saying all of the right words in the largest platforms possible and presenting himself in a contentious manner to those who are simply oblivious to the reality that's unfolding, simply oblivious to how large majorities of the public in the Western world see the situation. He is now the voice of reason. Worst guy to put as the voice of reason, by the way, because he has a million other perspectives that are unbelievably damaging and also outright hypocritical especially in comparison to his assessment on Israel. Because he'll turn around and talk about Israel like this, right? But he also has the exact same ambitions in America. He wants to turn America into an Israel-style ethno-state where he has control over the demographic makeup. So none of the liberals are capable of addressing that hypocrisy because on the one hand, they're too predisposed with like defending business as usual politics, and that requires them to, in a certain way, be oblivious to the actions of the government against critics of Israel. There's also obviously the classic tendency to make it seem as though, America and even Israel to a certain degree as state actors are not behaving in a manner that is inconsistent with international law. They have to normalize it. Like there's always this level of sane washing. Okay. You saying he's anti-Semitic is the same thing media's been doing to you. You would think you'd be more careful throwing that around. We have to stop calling him anti-Semitic with zero evidence. Exactly how is he anti-Semitic? I mean, it's because of what forces he has aligned himself with in the past. That to me is impossible not to reckon with, right? Like Tucker Carlson is the most palatable version. He'll never say it's the Jews, right? He'll never step on that landmine. He's got 30 plus years of experience in mainstream news not to touch that. But as far as like his worldview goes, I mean, it's virtually identical to all of these other monsters. Now, what's really funny about this, and Tucker does do this every now and then, and Nick Fuentes has done this as well personally when he's been on Piers Morgan, is that there is a major hypocrisy line that they can hit. Like, for example, if someone were to turn around and tell Tucker Carlson, well, I think you're anti-Semitic because you gave a platform to Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes is a Holocaust denier. Nick Fuentes is a neo-Nazi. Tucker Carlson can just as easily turn around and say, oh, really? Well, that's interesting because you give a platform to people denying the current Holocaust on a daily basis, right? You give a platform to people who are pro-Israel. You give a platform to people who are currently denying the actual active genocide that's taking place. So as far as like my personal beliefs or my personal disagreements with Nick Fuentes aside, I talk to everybody, right? He can turn around and literally say something like, oh, well, I talked to Mike Huckabee. Mike Huckabee is a far more repulsive figure. Mike Huckabee is a far more repulsive figure than Nick Fuentes. Mike Huckabee wants to do the Greater Israel Project. What's going on? Right? He can say, I'll talk to Randy Fine. Randy Fine is a far worse person than Nick Fuentes is, right? Like he could say something like that and basically cook whoever is advancing this narrative. Because there's truth to it. It is inconsistent. The reality of the matter is Nick Fuentes is a monster, right? For a million different reasons. On top of that, he's anti-Semitic. His anti-Israel critique comes from a place of jealousy almost, where he's like, I'm a fascist. I want to do what Israel's doing, but here in the United States of America for white people, white Christians specifically, there is virtually no difference between Nick Fuentes and Randy Fine. And as a matter of fact, Nick Fuentes is anti-Semitic. Randy Fine is pro-Israel. Their worldview is almost entirely aligned, okay? Almost entirely aligned, except Randy Fine is also pro-Israel's genocide, and unbelievably Islamophobic, which Nick Fuentes is as well, right? Like, so they literally have the same exact worldview, the same exact opinions, except Nick Fuentes is anti-Israel, Randy Fine is pro-Israel. So from the average person's perspective, you make Nick Fuentes marginally better than Randy Fine in that equation. The average person doesn't look at Randy Fine and go, well, that's a normal guy. That's a normal congressperson. I like what he has to say. You know, they think, holy shit, this guy's insane. We are giving right-wing forces a tremendous amount of leeway as well. What is this? Maybe he changed. People can change, you know? Okay, dude. W. Tucker, maybe he's not a monster as you always present him. I don't know if Tucker Carlson has sincerely had an attitude change on the children that have been slaughtered in Gaza. That could very well be real, okay? But this attitude in this community is exactly what is so dangerous, because it's hard for me to trust Tucker Carlson. It's going to require a lot more for me to turn around and be like, oh, maybe he's changed his attitude in general. Because like what a lot of people are failing to factor in to this equation is like all the other shit that Tucker Carlson believes. Yes, on the issue of Israel, I will admit, I don't know if it's coming from a place of anti-Semitism and mistrust for Jews, whatever, or if it's a sincerely held belief due to what he has seen in Gaza, or the third position, which is both of those things, right? Could very well be any of those three options, okay? Changed on what? Now he believes in healthcare? No. I'm talking about just Israel, man. Calm down. That's the broader point that I'm trying to make, which is that when it comes down to it, the rest of his worldview is repulsive, like is heinous. He wants to do what Israel is doing, that he's criticizing Israel. He wants to do that in America. He wants to turn America into an Israel-style country, a white demographic majority ethno state. That is clear. That's what his primary purpose has been for a decade now. The reason why I still say, yeah, and this is also another reason why I don't trust him either. He was in that room. This is right after the Venezuelan operation. I can't believe how hard Tucker is clapping and smiling for Trump after kidnapping Maduro at his White House meeting with oil executives about how they're going to pillage Venezuela. Yeah, that wasn't that long ago, man. I need every Tucker defender in this chat to know this is why minorities don't trust Western leftists. These morons will call a white nationalist based on being on the right side of the easiest issue to criticize and gain credit. Yes. My anger and my resentment also revolves around how easy it is to win favors. Not necessarily because like the audience is stupid, even though there is a little bit of that in it too, but it's because the media environment is designed in such a way where there's such a massive vacuum with previously establishment media figures or currently establishment media figures, the political class. None of them are speaking on this issue with the same conviction that Tucker Carlson is. Okay? It is their fault and their failure that people are far more receptive to assuming that Tucker Carlson has demonstrated real change about his worldview. I'm not even saying that for the record. Okay? I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that Tucker Carlson has had a complete attitude shift. That's why I still say, given his past performance, nothing that he has said thus far and has even implied is what guides me into believing that there is, anti-Semitic opinions in Tucker Carlson's mind. That comes from not his own personal statements about Jews. He doesn't make those statements by design. He will never make those statements until it's like totally permissible to do so. He's a demon. Okay? This comes from his years and years long advocacy for white supremacist values. He has cribbed and straight up repeated a metric ton of white nationalist sentiment coming from open, avowed neo-Nazis and white supremacists, and therefore anti-Semites as well.
Political interests at all. I often criticize Britain, but I love Britain. As I said, I have family there. And I don't think that Britons understand just how badly they've been shafted by the United States. And I am ashamed of that, and I hope that we will do everything we can to rectify it. I know that Keir Starmer understands that. He doesn't seem to care. He doesn't have, again, the control to do anything about it, which is sad to see. The debasement of the country is sad for me to see. But I hope that our next president strikes a far more conciliatory and cooperative tone with Britain and tries to help Britain, because it has a lot of problems that will be very obvious by the next time there's a presidential election in my country.
You have said that you have been called anti-Semitic because of your opposition to the US joining Israel in fighting this war.
Yes.
In March, senior Republican Senator Ted Cruz said anti-Semitism is being spread by loud voices, the most consequential of whom is Tucker Carlson. Republican Congressman Randy Fine called you the most dangerous anti-Semite.
Yeah, okay. See, that's what I mean. Randy motherfucking Fine saying Tucker Carlson's an anti-Semite doesn't mean shit. Yesterday, Tucker Carlson released an interview which featured an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory about the Rothschilds This week, Carlson flanked Trump, J.D. Vance, and Mike Johnson at the RNC. He remains one of the most influential voices in the conservative movement. Yeah, it's like this over the last decade or so that lead me to believe that, yes, he will never personally say anti-Semitic, right? Anti-Semitism, like direct anti-Semitism in the way that rank anti-Semitism in the way that you hear from the likes of Nick Fuentes, you will never hear from Tucker Carlson until it is totally permissible to say that stuff. Okay? He's had numerous Holocaust deniers on his show and has not contested their position, right? Like that's all. He does this shit all the time. He's just a talented fascist, a room reader who believes in little to nothing, just like every other talented fascist. Yes, he is the most dangerous propagandist. Okay? He is the most dangerous propagandist. He straight up mainstreamed the Great Replacement Theory. The Great Replacement Theory is now a key fixture in mainstream Republican politics. Tucker Carlson did that every single night on Fox News. Tucker Carlson played a major role in that because he platformed it every single night on Fox News when he was the most popular broadcast in the country. The most popular news broadcast in the country. Is terrifying. It's insane how easy it is for him to have moral high ground when pressed by a BBC reporter. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because this is the one issue that so many liberals refuse to have conviction on. We think is the easiest one to speak out on, which is true. There are, I guess, significant setbacks in mainstream outlets that stop them from doing so. And therefore, guys like Tucker Carlson look incredibly convincing.
In America. What do you say to that?
Of course, I'm not an anti-Semite, and that's why they're calling me one. Because my position on Israel has nothing to do with the religion or ethnicity of Israelis. It has everything to do with decisions made by its government that hurt my country. And so in order to avoid having that debate, the fastest and most expedient way to end it is by calling the person trying to raise it a bigot. And I just don't think that works anymore. I would say that what matters in politics and in life is what you do. I think anti-Semitism and racism of all kinds, including anti-white racism, are all immoral and anti-Christian, and I oppose them. You shouldn't judge people on the basis of how they were born, period.
Sure. And you said a moment ago, what matters in politics is what you do. You had far-right commentator Nick Fuentes on your show, who, as you know, has said Hitler was really effing cool, Hitler was awesome, Hitler was right, the Holocaust didn't happen, and said on his podcast, in his view, Jewish people are the problem rather than Israel. I know you've said you've had him on because
I disagree with that.
Right. Do you have concerns that broadcasting Nazi-loving, Holocaust-denying guests to your audience and potentially mainstreaming and normalizing those views is an issue?
Look, I've said that I disagreed with Fuentes on those questions. I don't think that you should ever judge or attack people on the basis of their bloodline. I also interviewed Ted Cruz. I tried to interview Randy.
Told you. He's not even entirely incorrect with that statement. The question here is not like, oh, how dare he retort here. The question is, how do we arrive at a position where Tucker Carlson can shelter his heinous worldview and is going uncontested pretty much, and the only contest coming from BBC actually makes him look like the normal person.
Fine, both of them have.
But let me go back to the Nick Fuentes stuff.
If I may finish my answer.
Sure.
I've interviewed both of them, or tried to interview. Fine, he wouldn't, but I've interviewed Ted Cruz, as you noted, and both of them have defended the genocide in Gaza, the murder of children. And I would say that sending money to a military that murders children is a little bit more significant a moral crime than saying ugly things.
Do you think Fuentes is anti-Semitic? Do you think he is?
It sounded like it to me. I said that to him, and I said I oppose anti-Semitism, which I sincerely do. Right. And by the way, unlike the UK, we have a First Amendment. So if I was an anti-Semite, I guess I would just say so at this point. I don't know why I would lie about it, but I oppose it. And I've opposed it in public consistently for my entire public life.
Can I ask you what you thought when you read Donald Trump's post on Tuesday in which he said,
like, that's it. That's the way to cut across Tucker Carlson's commentary is not by being like, oh, you talked to Nick Fuentes. The way to expose the contradictions in Tucker Carlson's worldview is by saying you don't like Israel. You think Israel's doing a genocide. That's fine. I agree with that. But some of the ethnic majority policies that you are railing against in Israel are identical to the policies that you want to advance in the United States of America. What do you have to say to your critics that complain that you are simply using this issue, this salient issue, as a way to win favors with the broad majority of people, and then simultaneously try to get them to arrive at your conclusions on America's demographic concerns? That's a question that you can only ask Tucker Carlson, though, if you also agree with the universally acknowledged truth that Israel is an apartheid state that is currently doing a genocide. But considering that a lot of these racist-ass liberals in mainstream outlets don't say that or can't say that, I don't know which it is at this point, you will never be able to address you will never be able to cut away at Tucker Carlson's worldview. You will never be able to undermine his perspective.
a whole civilization will die tonight?
Has he ever actually advocated for specific policies? All I remember is doing a lot of racial grievance and anti-white racism stuff on Fox, but he always left solutions implied, not stated. Yes, bro. What are you talking about? He's literally said every immigrant that's in this country is a parasitic force that's destroying the beauty of Western civilization. Yes, that's all he talks about, and that's all he used to talk about. Now he at least has, you know, Israel to talk about. Tucker Carlson has been the #1 favorite, fan favorite of every single neo-Nazi and Klansman in this country for a decade now. And the reason for why is because he, as they correctly point out, correctly understand, takes these otherwise not so palatable positions that many people hear and go, ooh, gross, that's a little bit too racist for me. And he makes them palatable. He'll say things like, how exactly is diversity our strength? You wouldn't want your family to not be able to communicate with one another. So why do you want your military? Like that's a direct quote. I know I have so many in the back of my mind. Okay. Yeah. White genocide is real, says Tucker Carlson. The white nationalist Peter Brimelow, who says the only real Americans are whites, and Tucker agrees. J.D. Vance's close friend Tucker is a white nationalist. Okay. This is from January. This is from January 21st, 2026.
The defining fact of our lives is that whites around the world are being eliminated, and I would like to know why.
The people running the society are anti-white, and they've been able to persuade or intimidate the entire legal system to operate in that anti-white way. Anti-white in this case really means anti-American, because the whites are Americans. The people who signed the Declaration of Independence, that's who Americans are.
Yeah.
Wait, what? You asked him that? Tucker literally told me to my face how much he's changed, and the whole exchange left me feeling slimy. He would lie and say he changed his mind about how race is used. He told me he believes race is used to divide the country to keep people from talking about class and wealth and equality. Well, here we are watching Tucker Carlson only a couple months ago interviewing a white nationalist and openly telling him that no, racial grievances are primary. Yeah, chatters, the chatter didn't fall for it. Okay. He's saying it made him feel slimy because he was like very clearly lying to him, which is why he shouldn't be trusted at all. I'm saying right now how lying is OP. Yeah, chatter challenged him
to operate in that anti-white way. Anti-white in this case really means anti-American, because the whites are Americans. The people who signed the Declaration of Independence, that's who Americans are.
Yeah.
He doesn't, he will always lean back into legacy Americans, for example. Yeah, right-wing anti-Zionists are understandably intent on dismantling Christian Zionism, a core obstacle to their views, moving mainstream in MAGA. But rather than developing real solidarity with Palestinians, it's a lot easier for them to resort to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Rich's new song, by the way, is at the top of the iTunes country music charts and #2 overall. While dogmatic support for Israel remains dominant on the right, dissenting views are hardly fringe, and I suspect these contradictions will continue to sharpen as isolationism moves more mainstream. This was back in 2024, July 17th, and it certainly has 2 years after Ben Lorber clocked it. This is also part of the reason why Tucker Carlson will never have a conversation with someone like myself. Because I'm very familiar with his background. I'm very familiar with the dangers of his worldview, and I actually oppose it. even if we aesthetically agree, or maybe even totally agree on the issue of Israel, right? There are so many other positions of Tucker Carlson that people who normally care about Palestinians would find to be horrifying. Okay, does he even know you? There's not a single person in the American political right-wing flank, especially, that doesn't know who the I am at this point.
Horrified by it, and I was. Look, as I've said, I don't think that Trump, who I continue to like, I don't think that Trump is in control. I don't think Trump is making these decisions. I know he's not, because I was present in the run-up to this. He's not making these decisions, and I feel sorry for him, as I've said. But more than Trump, anything to do with him or his future, is the effect on my country. Our leaders should not talk like that. They shouldn't. Our conflict is not with another civilization or another religion. It's with governments, at least conceptually, that do things that we don't like, that are bad for us, and we have conflict over that. We can never declare war on a civilization. We shouldn't. That's immoral. What does that even mean? Does that include the children in that civilization? Of course it does.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk
All that masculinity, all that gender-neutral masculinity, things could get out of hand. So in the spirit of easing tensions and lowering the temperature at CNN a bit, we have no problem admitting, for the record, that Mr. Hiker is one heaping, helping hunk of a man. We're not ashamed to say that at all. We have no problem admitting that. No problem whatsoever.
That's a meme. But the real coverage that he did on me was American comments. He ripped into me pretty hard back then. And even if he doesn't remember that, which is perfectly fine because it was a long time ago and I was nowhere near the prominent media figure I am now, he's definitely familiar with what I do.
You don't buy the argument, look, this is what Donald Trump does. I mean, you've known him for years. This is what Donald Trump does. He uses extreme language to put pressure on to get some sort of concession.
I mean, there are two levels on which to assess this. One, the practical. Second, the moral. As a practical matter, did it work? Is the Strait open this morning? No, it's not. So it didn't work, okay? Its only effect likely is to engender a generational conflict with another civilization, another religion, another part of the world. How is that good for my grandchildren? Probably not. So practically it doesn't work.
Okay.
Morally, the words you use matter, and the more power you have, the more they matter. And so to declare war on a civilization in my name is just not acceptable. It doesn't mean I hate Trump. It means that's disgusting and wrong and hurts my country, and my obligation is to stand up and say so.
You've claimed a couple of times in our conversation that Donald Trump is not in control. Many Democrats, and also some on the right, former Trump allies like Marjorie Taylor Greene, are now calling for the president's removal, with some citing the 25th Amendment, which allows the vice president and the cabinet to declare that a president is no longer able to do the job. Do you want to see him removed?
I want to see the system reformed. Once again, 2 days ago, the president, I mean, him, the president before him, the president before him, the president before him.
This is also bullshit. Here's the difference between me, someone who's honest, and someone like Tucker Carlson, who's a little bit of a grifter. I'm not going to sit there and tell you that Israel's the reason why America went to war with Iraq, because that's not the case. Was Israel a component in the decision-making? Absolutely. That much is clear. We know that for a fact because Benjamin Netanyahu spoke very publicly in front of Congress about how wonderful it would be if America invaded Iraq. The other honest assessment here is that there was one president who told Israel no. There were two presidents that told Israel no, as a matter of fact, at different times. One was Barack Hussein Obama with the JCPOA, and the other was actually Joe Biden the first time in 2021, before October 7, where he called Benjamin Netanyahu, called Israel and told him to cut it out. Israel, subsequently after that call, cut it out. They were doing another mowing of the lawn operation, and they stopped it. Now, of course, post-October 7, Joe Biden and his deteriorating mental faculties, you mean Iran, you said Iraq? No, Israel with Iraq is different than Israel with Iran. We can make honest assessments here. Didn't Clinton also tell Israel who's the superpower here? Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. Tucker Carlson also clocked Israel's blackmail operations with and leaned into the Monica Lewinsky scandal. There's decent evidence that like Israel may or may not have played a role in at least showing the American side that they had knowledge over the Monica Lewinsky scandal before it was unearthed. George W. Bush refused to allow Israel to attack in 2007 too. Yes, George W. Bush also pushed for elections in Palestine against Israel's wishes. Presidents before Donald Trump actually were, they were super pro-Israel at the end of the day. I mean, so was Barack Obama. Barack Obama did the MOU, $3.8 billion annually for the next 10 years after, right? He was done and he was out of office. And that was a concession that he traded so that he was able to get the JCPOA, which is a ridiculous statement in and of itself. Like, what a ridiculous situation that we have to give concessions to a random third party when we're engaging in a multilateral commitment with a foreign adversary of our own. We invaded Iran. We bombed Iran because Israel wanted us to do so. We have not been able to get out of this quagmire because Israel doesn't want us to get out of it. It's that simple. Very different dynamic at this point on Trump 2. Very different dynamic in Trump 2 as opposed to any other former president. Many former presidents have been urged to bomb Iran, invade Iran. They've said no. It's not just my assessment. John Kerry also said it.
All American presidents since 1963 have done substantially what Israel wanted us to do. And now it's really hurting us. And I've been aware of this for decades, and I haven't said one word about it because it's not worth the fight. But now I see our country, its economy, its understanding of itself, in the process of being destroyed because our leaders, and not just our president, our entire Congress, many of our governors, did the bidding of a foreign power. Right. And so the problem is not simply Trump. The problem is the mechanism of control that allows a country of 9 million to control a country of 350 million. What is that mechanism? I'm not sure I know the answer.
But
we need to find out what that is.
Well, as you know, as Commander-in-Chief, he could have said no to Benjamin Netanyahu. Barack Obama, other presidents have. Joe Biden, Barack Obama.
You're absolutely right. And I made that point. And you're absolutely right, they did. And I wish our president had. But he didn't.
So it's not the system.
And he went into
He didn't make that point. He made the opposite point, by the way. He made the opposite point. He said none of the previous presidents have actually said no to Israel either. And I'm trying to figure out why. And then she turned around and tried to say Barack Obama. Couldn't even mouth the words Barack Obama correctly, but said Joe Biden has said no to Israel, which is true. Both of those are true. There's only one president that has always given everything to everything Israel wanted unconditionally. Many presidents have given Israel a lot more than Israel deserves. So much more. Barack Obama and Joe Biden included, right? Especially Joe Biden post-October 7th. Donald Trump is the only president that is like rarely ever limited Israel's ambitions. The only time Donald Trump ever did was at the end of the 12-day war.
Well, it is the system because the last president financed the Gaza genocide. The president before him, same thing.
You've said a couple of times in this interview that you really like Donald Trump. In March, you said you'll always love President Trump, no matter what he says about you. On Thursday, he called you low IQ, a nut job, a fool. Also, he suggested you should see a good psychiatrist. Are you going to continue to love him?
As I've said, I feel sorry for him as I do for all slaves, but I will always like him. I will say Trump is one of the funniest people I've ever met. I feel sorry for him. I think he has some great qualities. I've certainly spent a lot of time with him, and I will always like him. If he called me now, I'd take the call. I don't want anything from him.
Well, he says he says you're always calling him, and he doesn't pick up anymore.
Yeah, no, I think that's not true. You can check my phone records, but I'm sure NSA already is. I'm not defensive about it.
What do the splits in the MAGA movement that we see now, former Trump allies like yourself, on the front foot criticizing the president and the action he's taken, what do they mean for the future of MAGA?
I think MAGA as a movement was never clearly defined, probably for a reason. There was no real platform in the Republican convention in 2024. That was, of course, by design. And so I think the movement is whatever Donald Trump says it is. I think that's the definition. I don't know another. He turns 80 in June. So this is not a movement that's going to, persist through the generations, I wouldn't think, since it's based on one man. But the idea that the U.S. government should act in its the interest of its own population, or that any government should act in the interest of its own population, is a kind of core tenet of democracy. In fact, that's the definition of democracy. The people rule. And
Zon, I'm curious, what would you need to see from Tucker Carlson to convince you that his views have genuinely shifted, for him to openly come out and say that the ethno-nationalist, the racial superior, like white nativist, anti-immigrant agenda that he advanced for the last decade or so was actually very damaging, and he was wrong to do it. And that, you know, the tens of thousands of hours of commentary that he pushed in that direction was wrong and should never be brought up, and that he will spend every waking moment going forward criticizing who he was and who still carry the torch of that same white nationalist, white supremacist attitude. As I've showed you, even all the way back in like January of this year, he's still advancing the same.
I think that will long outlive all of us, I hope, because it's the only form of government that makes inherent sense.
I wanted to ask you about the Melania Trump press conference, very unusual, where she denied connections to Jeffrey Epstein and said that any claims linking her and him need to end today. What do you think is going on there?
Strictly speaking, I don't know what's going on there. I know the White House communication staff had no idea she was going to say that. So it's one of two possibilities. Either she was reading speculation about her relationship with Epstein on the internet and she was upset and wanted to clear her name, which is totally possible. Or there was something else going on. So the Israeli government has a long and well-documented track record of using sex scandal or the appearance of scandal to force American political leaders into doing its bidding. You hope it wasn't that. But I did notice that within an hour or two after that press conference, a piece came out, I think, in the Daily Beast alleging some connection between Melania Trump and Epstein, which was obviously hurtful to her and embarrassing to the first family. So I don't know if there's any kind of connection, but I do know, once again, this is a fact, that sex scandals are used probably not just by the Israeli government, probably lots of foreign governments. It's not just the Israelis. I just want to be clear.
I mean, I am going to point out, I probably don't need to because our audience can see and hear for themselves. Pretty much everything that you've said in our conversation, Tucker Carlson, you have put at the door of the Israeli government. Now, to some people, that will be evidence that you are anti-Semitic. You are anti-Jewish.
Oh, I know. I'm very anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish. Well, first of all, the state of Israel does not speak for all Jews at all, despite its claims. It does not. There are many, many.
Dude, this argument is God, liberals, man. Liberals, dude. This isn't like they literally think that this is a bar. They think like, oh, well, you're anti-Semitic. Israel has said you're anti-Semitic. Who's next? Adolf Hitler? Like, what? Who gives a fuck, dude? What are you talking about? At the end of the day, he's a propagandist. He's a dangerous one. Randy Fine believes every single thing that Tucker Carlson believes. And then on top of that, Randy Fine is pro-Israel and pro-genocide. Okay? So Tucker Carlson is better than Randy Fine, objectively. Because they literally believe every single thing, okay? They believe the identical shit. Except Tucker Carlson is anti-Israel. Randy Fine is pro-Israel, which makes him worse. That's what's so unbelievable about the modern Republican Party. So when liberals turn around and try to do this shit, it's like they do not realize that they're not actually hitting a line that they think they're hitting. Maybe 10 years ago, this would have been very significant, right? In 2026, this doesn't mean anything.
Jews, many of whom I know, who don't think the Israeli government of Benjamin Netanyahu speaks for them.
No,
I'm speaking of the government, not religion.
Hold on. Because I wasn't suggesting that.
Of course you were suggesting
what
that.
I was suggesting was that a lot of the
I've been in
things
this
that you
business
discussed
longer
today,
than you, and I understand what a slur looks like. And you're attempting to call me an anti-Semite in a passive-aggressive way. Some people would say that. Well, I'm responding to your slur and saying that it's untrue. It does not apply to me. Doubtless there are anti-Semites who don't like Israel. I'm not an anti-Semite. I don't hate Israel. The Israeli government, this is documented, and I saw it personally, steered the United States into a war that hurts the United States and the world. I'm offended by that. I didn't want it, and I'm mad about it now. I have every right to feel that way. That does not make me an anti-Semite, despite your insinuation. And I think it's important that I say that. And by the way, I hope that you run this. I can't control whether or not you air this exchange. I hope that you will, because I think it's important to push back against slurs like that, because they limit our ability to understand what's actually happening. This is not an attack by Jews on the United States. This is Benjamin Netanyahu moving the United States to do something he thinks will benefit him, but that does not benefit us. It's that simple.
Tucker Carlson, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Is it accurate to say being called an anti-Semite is a slur in an example the person is not exhibiting anti-Semitic behavior? I mean, it's a smear. I don't think it's a slur. And every single day that people deploy it, ironically enough, every single day that people deploy it as a heinous smear, it becomes less of a heinous smear. What I mean by that is you've softened the impact of this sentiment when less people care about anti-Semitism. And less people care about anti-Semitism because you keep deploying it against people who are critical of Israel. Oops, she bit off more than she could chew. I feel sorry for him as I do all slaves. Incredible, brutal truth. Victoria Derbyshire is so frightened of criticizing Israel. Did she quote Randy Fine to make her point? I love how Tucker doesn't allow petty attacks slide without a rebuttal. Yeah, everybody loves him. He cooked her. He looked good. He looked great in this video. Okay? I need you to understand, Trump is the least reliable party to genuinely comprehend what's going to happen next. He does not know what's going on. He doesn't know what he's going to say next. He's an absolute lunatic. The vice president landed in D.C. at 4:31 p.m. after a 56-hour Pakistan journey. Vance made phone calls from Air Force 2 on the trip, including to Israel's ambassador to the United States, a U.S. official told me. Let's get to it. Okay, we'll talk about the final offer America presented. We'll talk about the failures. Last night, right around the time when I went offline, Vice President J.D. Vance, after a 21-hour back-and-forth negotiation process in Islamabad, Pakistan, came out on a podium and delivered his remarks, stating that the ceasefire negotiations, or at least the first attempt of ceasefire negotiations, had failed. Behind him were Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Both of them were smiling. Do with that information what you will. 21 hours, and they were smiling.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Cheesing.
And let me say a couple of notes of appreciation. First of all, to the Prime Minister of Pakistan and to Field Marshal Munir, who were both incredible hosts. And whatever shortcomings in the negotiation, it wasn't because of the Pakistanis who did an amazing job. And
yeah, except, let's be real, Pakistan, you tried to be Turkey. You tried to be the table, and you failed. Turkey would have been the table, and Turkey would have brought diplomacy to the table. Pakistan is not the table. Turkey is. One table.
really tried to help us and the Iranians bridge the gap and get to a deal. We have been at it now for 21 hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement. And I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement. We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on.
These are cheesing in the back, bro. They're like, yeah, we it. Why? Why, oh, why could they feel so confident? Feel so elated after 21 hours of high stakes negotiations? Why were they so stoked? I wonder why. By the way, my assessment on the situation is Donald Trump, knowing full well that the negotiations were going to fail, sent JD Vance because he wants to JD Vance. Marco Rubio, on the other hand, is straight up a demon. What was Marco Rubio doing, knowing full well that these fucking negotiations were going to fail? Hanging that shit around J.D. Vance's neck? He was hanging out with Donald Trump at the UFC. Those are the two primary figures, right? You got the J.D. Vance and you got the Marco Rubio. Those are the 2028 contenders who will carry the torch of Donald Trump and MAGA. Okay? So what they do in this moment matters. A lot of people have speculated, and I also kind of believe this. I'm leaning into this as well, that J.D. Vance was the one who leaked over and over again to the media. J.D. Vance was the one who leaked over and over again to the media that he was very much opposed to continuing war with Iran. Now, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Well, you do that because you know this war is unpopular and it will be reflected on very poorly, especially depending on which way it goes. So you're positioning yourself as the anti-war candidate for 2028. Yeah, I said, what is this country, man? Here's Donald Trump talking to the fighter.
You're a beautiful guy. Great fighter. Put me some more than you win this fucking fight. I'll give you a hundred. You look so good. You're too good looking to be a fighter. You are a silk fighter. Thank you, man. You're a beautiful guy.
Beautiful guy. Trump flirts with a UFC fighter as peace negotiations with Iran fail. That's what happened last night.
And we've made that as clear as we possibly could, and they have chosen not to accept our terms. Questions?
Sir, Nick Robertson from CNN. Precisely what have they rejected here? Can you help us understand it a little bit?
Well, I won't go into all the details because I don't want to negotiate in public after we've negotiated for 21 hours in private. But the simple fact is that we need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations. Again, their nuclear program, such as it is, the enrichment facilities that they had before, they've been destroyed. But the simple question is, do we see a fundamental commitment of will for the Iranians not to develop a nuclear weapon, not just now, not just 2 years from now, but for the long term? We haven't seen that yet. We hope that we will. Jen.
Was there a framework on anything? And also, did the Iranian frozen assets come up? And did you reach any conclusions on those frozen assets?
We talked about all those issues, Jen, and we talked about a number of issues beyond that. And so certainly those things came up. But again, we just could not get to a situation where the Iranians were willing to accept our terms. I think that we were quite flexible. We were quite accommodating. The president told us, you need to come here in good faith and make your best effort to get a deal. We did that. And unfortunately, we weren't able to make any headway. Preston.
Mr. Vice President, how often did you communicate with President Trump throughout the negotiations? There were reports that there were multiple rounds where there were breaks in between negotiations. How often did you communicate with the president throughout those rounds, and what was he saying as you were going through these negotiations that you said fell short?
Yeah, obviously we were talking to the president consistently. I don't know how many times we talked to him, a half dozen times, a dozen times over the past 21 hours. We obviously also talked to Admiral Cooper, to Pete, to Marco, to the entire national security team. We talked to Scott Bessent a number of times. So look, we were constantly in communication with the team because we were negotiating in good faith. And we leave here with a very simple proposal, a method of understanding that is our final and best offer. We'll see if the Iranians accept it. Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, where does this leave the Strait of Hormuz?
Did you talk to Prime Minister Netanyahu at all today? What about the Strait of Hormuz? Did they give you any indication of this?
Yeah, we know what about the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. blockade the ship. U.S. to blockade ships entering or exiting Iranian ports. America has decided they're going to add a secondary blockade to the Iranian one, which is nutty. Yeah, there it is from Chinese social media. Iran toll, U.S. toll. Okay? Yeah, break an enemy blockade by blockading their blockade. Don Zhu. You can't get outsmarted if you don't think. Never let him know your next move. And the best possible way to never let your enemy know your next move is if you personally don't know your own next move. Okay? That's the Don Zhu method. That's JD Pondom, baby. We'll get into the long, what is it, a QR code on the door? What is this? All right, anyway. Here.
America's vice president left here with no breakthrough to show for his efforts after marathon talks.
Loser, but this is, oh God, he's such a loser. It's awesome.
Lasting almost 24 hours, he appeared early morning looking deflated and calling it a day.
The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
It was, he said, the nuclear issue where things came unstuck.
We need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations.
The news from Islamabad prompted a furious reaction back in Washington and a threat from President Trump to escalate this war yet further, with the U.S. naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, which is already shut by Iran. It raises the spectre of markets plunging where they open tomorrow and clashes at sea. Talks here were historic and serious, the highest level face-to-face US negotiations with Iran since its revolution in the 70s. The Iranians were sounding more conciliatory than the Americans, saying some progress had been made.
On some issues, we actually reached mutual understanding, but there was a gap over 2 or 3 important issues, and ultimately the talks didn't result in an agreement.
Pakistani mediators say the diplomacy is not over yet.
We hope that the two sides continue with the positive spirit to achieve durable peace and prosperity for the entire region and beyond. It is imperative that the parties continue to uphold their commitment to ceasefire.
There's now a frantic effort by many other nations to help put the diplomacy back on track. There is so much at stake. A resumption in hostilities is now more than possible, but for the Americans, the challenge is that the use of force has failed to solve the Iran problem, its nuclear issue, and its control now, the Strait of Hormuz, in 6 weeks of war. So why should it now? Talks here may have foundered, but clearly made some progress. There is a chance of building on that, but not if the US is embarking on yet more escalation, this time at sea. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Islamabad.
I love this shit. Oh, it's so loud. Okay, I love this shit, okay? Why do I love this shit? Because what's the main reason why Iran's toll system is a major burden from an American perspective? Obviously, number one, it shows that Iran actually has a full military dominance over this choke point, the strategic choke point that's very important for 20% of all the world's energy supply to flow through, right? Impeding on that in any way, shape, or form, or exercising control over that directly contradicts why America is supposed to be the hegemon, right? That's one. But the other reason is because that strategic choke point being controlled by Iran and stopping most of the tankers that would normally transit through freely is destroying the global energy markets and is going to lead to unprecedented shortages and also inflation. As I've said already, oil and gas is a global commodity that everyone needs, and there is inelastic demand. So therefore, if one place doesn't have oil, then it impacts the global market prices across the board. So for Donald Trump to turn around and decide, oh, you're doing a blockade? Well, guess what? We're doing a blockade on top of your blockade is only going to make the crisis worse. Because if Iran is saying, oh, we'll let all the ships go through as long as they pay us a toll, and then America turns around and says, nah, we're blocking them, it's incredible. It is unbelievably stupid. It's an unbelievably stupid thing for him to do. It's hilarious as well. It's a very funny move, a very dumb move, but also a very funny move. Respect to Donald Trump. Indeed, Trump's Hormuz play is a classic jiu-jitsu move. If the strait gets blocked, America will be the one doing the blocking, not the RGC. Oh, God, these guys are so stupid. They're so stupid. Look at the conservatives. The blockade always made more sense than seizing Karg Island. It stops Iran's exports, its revenues. It's a counterpoint to their closing of the straits. They may attack Gulf oil facilities, but it puts greater pressure on Iran, also puts great pressure on China to pressure Iran. Conservatives last week, Trump is doing an amazing job opening the Strait of Hormuz. Conservatives this week, Trump is doing an amazing job blockading the Strait of Hormuz. Amazing. Trump announcing that he's going to beat Iran at his own game by blocking the Hormuz even harder.
May Allah awaken the people and help them to see the evil doings of Israel and the United States.
Who could forget the classic jiu-jitsu move? When your opponent is beating your ass, you start punching yourself in the face instead, and you go, ha ha, I wanted my ass beat to begin with, sir. That's what this is. Classic jiu-jitsu move, okay? That's what happens when you're engaging in hand-to-hand combat and you're doing jiu-jitsu, okay? And your opponent is choking you, so you go, well, I'm holding my breath. I'm holding my breath myself. Ha ha! 12D chess. Never let him know your next move, baby. I think he's joining the other team. That's JD Pondom, baby. Put some respect on his name. Put some respect on it. You can't fire me. I quit. That's always the last desperate attempt by Donald Trump. Whenever things are going south, he goes, ha, it myself. Okay, joke's on you. I wanted the situation to be worse. Now, obviously, there are some negative consequences here, and there will be some limitations to what Trump can and can't do. We shall see if he actually follows through on this, because almost the entirety of Iranian tankers are being shipped to China. So will Donald Trump take a stance against Chinese flag tankers that are delivering oil and gas to China? Remember, even before the last 42 days, I believe it was 80% of all Iranian oil and gas that was directly going to China, right? Iranian oil is not a major part of Chinese oil. Now that percentage has obviously increased since no ships are transiting through the strait as it stands currently. But most of Iranian oil was going to China anyway. So is he going to start duking it out with China? Because that feels kind of dumb, especially right now when America is at its weakest point globally, both with its soft power utterly destroyed by Donald Trump, weirdly enough, but also its hard power capabilities have taken a significant hit by a country that is much smaller than China, by a country that is much less powerful than China. Okay, China is a nuclear country, a country with nuclear arms. China is the manufacturing engine of the entire planet. You can't really do what you have failed to do to Iran to a country like China. You can't do it. China could with much ease, punish America and maybe even punish the rest of the globe if they wanted to, without even the threat of nukes, obviously. Regarding Trump's threat/decision, Trita Parsi says, why does it say Trita Parsi search? Anyway, to impose a naval blockade on Iran, color me a skeptic. Taking more oil off the market, particularly the only oil that is now getting out of the Persian Gulf, will drive oil prices further up. And the paper price of oil will get closer to the actual price, which should be around $150 per barrel. So that literally, again, you can't do that. The whole reason why you wanted to open the Strait of Hormuz was because of what's going on in the oil markets. Okay, so that's incredible move by JD Pandan. Brilliant, sir. He is truly the real revolutionary, the real green energy champion that this world needed. Okay, many of you don't understand. He doesn't think in decades. He thinks in generations. He thinks in centuries. The Trumpian mind cannot be comprehended. It turns out some of y'all have only watched movies about how to blow up a pipeline. Trump is quite literally doing that, okay? So who's the real woker now? Donald Trump is forcibly creating an environment for that renewable energy transition for every country. Respect. Put some respect on his name. He is the GOAT, okay? Don Zoo. So, a dramatic increase in inflation in the U.S. will ensue. Avoiding this is precisely why Trump was stuck in a position where he had no escalatory options out of this conflict before the ceasefire. He still doesn't. Stopping tankers carrying Iranian oil wouldn't just be an escalation vis-a-vis Iran, but also against the countries that are buying Iranian oil, which includes China, India, and other Asian countries. I doubt Trump is ready for that escalation, particularly given the upcoming summit in Beijing. This is true. This is also true for punishing countries that have negotiated a toll with Iran for the Straits. That includes Pakistan, which hosted the negotiations. That's probably secondary. I don't think America gives about Pakistanis being mad at them. Sorry, no disrespect. I know I come across a little jealous because Pakistan was the table, okay, as opposed to Turkey, which is the normal position, right? But that's not. I'm just being serious about it. I think America is very selfish and also doesn't care about Pakistan's interests at all. The naval blockade escalation will make the closing of the Red Sea more likely by the Houthis. That would take another 12% of global oil flow off the market. We would now be looking at oil at around $200 per barrel. There are 9 or so days left of the ceasefire. Since neither side has explicitly stated talks won't resume or that the ceasefire is dead and over with, all these moves should be treated as tactics and threats within negotiations. It wouldn't be surprising if these threats are walked back soon, perhaps before markets open on Monday and a new round is announced. However, there is time for brinksmanship and there is time for serious negotiations. Golubov also had a line on this too, but we'll get to that in a second. If the U.S. truly was insisting on zero enrichment in Islamabad, which was not Trump's red line at first, but rather Israel's, then the next talks will be rendered a failure, just as the talks in May 2025 were killed by Trump shifting to the Israeli red line. Still, I don't think that necessarily will lead to a return to war. A more likely scenario is a new non-negotiated status quo in which Tehran retains control over the Straits but doesn't get any sanctions relief while the U.S. pulls out of the war, and the question becomes whether Israel will continue the war on its own. This is a likely scenario, okay? Which, of course, in the interim will allow Iran to gear up with the latest and greatest Chinese technology as well, from manpads to, anti-air defense systems and the like, and therefore will present a much more competent force that is capable of defending its own territory from aerial bombardment campaigns that Israel could conduct without American help. Not really sure how much Israel will be able to defend itself. Don't really see that happening, even though Israel is crazy like that. Okay? China is not sending any air defense to Iran. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I know that the Bloomberg report is questionable, but we'll see about that. You never know. You never know. Esfandiar, this guy's really good. The only explanation I can come up with for Trump's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is that he desperately wants the U.S. to be cut in on the future toll revenue. A few things to consider. By definition, a blockade does not reopen the strait. Iran had already blockaded itself by closing the strait to most vessels in the first place. The oil exports Iran was sustaining do not create significant revenues because of U.S. sanctions. If revenues were the issue, Trump would have canceled General License U ahead of the April 16th deadline and issued new sanctions targeting Iran's Chinese customers. Arguably, the blockade announcement puts more pressure on the Gulf states than it does on Iran. No Gulf country had called for a blockade, and I suspect the announcement came as a complete surprise. The terms that Trump will insist upon to end his blockade and the terms that Iran will insist upon to reopen the strait may be similar. Now, two countries are trying to demonstrate their control over the strait, leaving the GCC and Iraq in a compromised position. Here is the chairman of the Israeli Parliament National Security Committee and a member of Netanyahu's coalition. Well, I guess he deleted his statement, so we don't know. But I think the attitude from the Israeli side is, dude, enough yapping. Come on, ceasefire over. Let's go bomb Iran, right? That's what the statement was that he deleted hastily. But I can totally see that being the overarching sentiment in the Israeli Knesset, right? Because they did not want the ceasefire to take place. They tried to spoil it by doing a heinous act of terror against Lebanon, killing 300 Lebanese civilians in a matter of 10 minutes. And then they never really stopped, right? They never really stopped with their ambition. America was like, yo, keep it cool, keep it chill. Yeah, this guy, chairman of the Knesset National Security Committee, Zvika Fohel, mocks Trump. Donald, if you have to shoot, shoot. Don't quack. And then posts a duck. Trump called in to Bartiromo on Fox. Oh, hell yeah. Oh, also, the speaker of the Islamic Republic of Iran's parliament, Ghalibaf, who was at the meetings, said, enjoy the current pump figures with the so-called blockade. Soon you will be nostalgic for $4 to $5 gas. Gas station near the White House. God damn, dude. Again, they're farting on us, okay? Straight up, they're farting on us.
The more
100%. We're going meat for meat, ban for ban on the meme side, and they got a whole lot more meat than we do, okay? Their meat goes a long way in comparison to our meat. They got all the Kubide. We got none. It's crazy. They got the Lego music videos, but it's not alone. It's not enough. They got the Iranian ministries, the Iranian embassies all around the world farting on us. And then you got Ghalibaf himself hiring some Zoomers, deciding to go meat for meat.
I think the two biggest issues are the Strait of Hormuz and the nuclear. The Strait of Hormuz is the more time urgent issue because every day that goes by is disastrous for the international economy and for the region. The nuclear issue can be parked for a while, not because it's not important, but unless there's evidence that Iran is changing the status of nuclear materials or its program, then nothing changes. So I would say Strait of Hormuz is the big issue. What we cannot allow is for Iran to exercise sole control over the strait, charging tolls where it derives all the revenues, because that would also eliminate any economic pressure on the Iranian regime. What I've argued is we ought to adopt the principle that the Strait of Hormuz needs to be open for all or closed to all, including Iran. And what I've recommended with two of my colleagues, Neil Ferguson and Phil Zelikow, is that we create a new Strait of Hormuz commission or authority that would essentially govern the operation of the strait. Perhaps you could have a fee charge, but then it would be distributed, not just to Iran, but to the other, half dozen or so local countries. Might be some degree of enforcement or support from the countries in Europe and Asia that are most dependent on the passage through the strait. I would bring China into the equation because it has influence, obviously, in Iran. But we need some type of a governing authority that dilutes Iran's ability to decide who gets to use the strait. And if we can't get that, David, I would favor a blockade. Again, open for all or closed to all.
This is so unbelievably stupid. Richard Haass, former head of the Council on Foreign Relations, says Washington is not negotiating from strength and that Iran has emerged from the war with greater leverage. On Hormuz, he suggests Washington should tell Iran the Strait of Hormuz can be open to all or closed to all, propose the International Governing Commission, including Iran and Gulf states. This is what Trump tried to do. Remember when Donald Trump was like tweeting or truthing, maybe we will control the Strait of Hormuz with Iran, right? Which, for the record, was already a massive L, okay? Because, like, the idea that you are going to beg Iran to cut you in on the toll collection implies that you've already given up, that Iran is controlling the Strait of Hormuz, okay? That statement was unbelievable from Trump. When he said that, that was an admission of defeat. And I covered it as such. Then they presented that as the alternative, and the Iranians, to their credit, recognizing the unbelievable leverage they have currently, said, off. That's what it seems like. They straight up were like, no, actually, you're not getting a piece of the toll collection. No, it's we're controlling the strait. We'll open it to all, but we will continue collecting fees. The problem here is they already do control the Strait of Hormuz. You either reopen it militarily or you reopen it through the process of diplomacy. And if America is not going to, talk the talk, then they have to walk the walk. This kind of bullshit about, we're adding a separate blockade on top of the pre-existing Iranian toll, it's not going to work. Not only are you actually positioning your naval assets, for the record, closer to Iranian missiles, right? Because there's that element as well. Like now you're what? Moving you're repositioning your naval assets within striking distance of Iran? Okay, good luck. That's number one. And number two, what are you going to do? Fight against China? It's an unbelievably stupid move. And last but not least, you don't get to actually enforce any control over the actual Iranian choke point. And on top of that, oil price skyrocket, which was the reason why you wanted to reopen the Strait of Hormuz anyway. Yeah, just 2 days ago, Trump said the Iranians were begging to make a deal and that Iran had no military capabilities left. Yet Iran is choosing not to make a deal and explicitly choosing to go back to war. Not really the move of someone desperate and without military. What this shows me is America wants a deal. Iran is fine with continuing the war, and Israel definitely doesn't want a deal. So if America wants a deal and Israel doesn't want a deal, and you don't get a deal, what does that tell you? That Israel is straight up controlling the entire conversation here on the American side. That's it. That's it. It is undeniable that we are placing Israel's idiotic goals ahead of our own, ahead of the rest of the world's interests. Do you think the rest of the world gives if Iran collects a toll? Probably not. I mean, I'm sure they don't like it. $2 million in additional funds given directly to Iran. But it is the most manageable way out of this. Instead of trying to get America to pay reparations, you get the entire world to pay reparations to Iran for America's spectacular quagmire. Headline in the IRGC-affiliated Fars news agency, Trump joins Team Iran. I've legitimately never heard of a more insane, designed to backfire policy under this administration, maybe ever. Not only attempting to blockade Iranian ships, but any ships that goes to the Strait of Hormuz by paying the toll. I do not foresee this. He said that it starts. CENTCOM says tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern is when the blockade starts. I think Trump goes back on this right before market open, maybe. Like, I just can't see this. I just do not see how this continues. I can't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Trump is that guy because he is nutty. But all signs point to him, pulling out of that. This genuinely feels, you're wrong, think like a stupid. I mean, I am thinking like a stupid. I'm trying to think like a stupid, but this is just like, there's levels to this stupid shit, okay? There's levels to this stupid shit. Him saying he's going to do this blockade is already stupid shit. Him actually enforcing the blockade, well, that's stupid beyond comprehension. Like, that is a new level of stupid that has been unlocked. Iran speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf responds to Trump, if you fight, we fight. And if you come with reason, we will deal with reason. We will not succumb to any threat. Let them test our will once again so we can give them an even greater lesson. Once again, I feel like these guys don't understand. The people that they're talking to there, Ghalibaf and the legal counsel representative and Arakshi, are the ones that want to negotiate. Most of the people who actually control the levers of power in Iran currently are not those people, okay? They want to keep going. They, understandably, don't feel as though they've dealt a significant enough blow to both Israel and the global markets. They want to keep blowing shit up, okay? You got the 25-year-old Hormuzers sitting around in this mosaic system in a bunker for the past 40 days, lobbing Shahed drones nonstop. All right, give me the go ahead. I'm going to hit that button again, okay? Clearly, they're like, I'm going to Hormuz. I'm going to Hormuz. I will fight on Hormuz right now. Okay? That's it. They are clearly invested in continuing until there is sufficient military deterrence that has been established. Iran and Thailand, the Thailand embassy says, the new move from Trump against our country is so comical that we don't even have a meme for it. So Trump is helping Iran now? Yes. All right. Let's get back to, the U.S. foreign policy establishment supports Trump collapsing the global economy. Strategic defeat has made the U.S. ruling classes insane. They'll drag us down with them rather than have their beloved empire take the L. Okay, Trump is now a vessel for the foreign policy blob that he ran against. Dennis Ross, former negotiator, says the blockade always made more sense than seizing Karg Island. It stops Iran's exports. Like, they literally went from Trump is going to reopen the blockade, reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He's going to do it with our military might. We got our hardest Marines coming in. Okay, how are we going to do this? I don't know. Maybe we'll take Karg Island. Maybe we'll take other islands. How will we do that? I don't know. It doesn't matter. We'll do it somehow. Okay. They're hard. They're ready to go. They're locked and loaded. They've been eating the best crayons that are readily available. It's virtually impossible to pull through on an operation like that without suffering significant casualties. Okay? Tremendous casualties. So much so that even Donald Trump is not, pushing for it. He's saying that he wants to do this, but he's clearly hasn't, done it, right? And instead, this is the new meta. Oh, you put a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz? Well, guess what? I'm going to put a blockade on your blockade, leaning into the offense to begin with, leaning into the damage that the blockade is doing to the global energy markets, and only worsening that crisis in our own hands. I'm going to piss off every single moment. I'm going to make the Gulf scream. I am going to make it so that the Gulf never deals with the United States of America again. Okay? I'm going to make it so that all of the Asian countries that we have developed security cooperative agreements with suffer energy grid collapses, and they will lean into China, and they will also never work with the United States of America again, absolutely gutting the security umbrella and the defensive perimeter that we've created around China. We're going to render that into nothing, okay? We're going to turn it into dust. I'm going to do that shit because I'm crazy. That's what Don Zhu is doing. That's what JD Pondon is doing. Respect JD Pondon, okay? He is a Maoist third worldist. We got 30 minutes of oil markets open, by the way. Who knows how they will react to this? We got the Maria Bartiromo thing. All right, let's hear what Richard Haas has to say. Okay. On Hormuz, he suggests that Washington tell Iran the Strait of Hormuz can be open to all, closed or all. You know, he came up with this brilliant idea. Trump leaned into it. Crucially, Haas says if Iran refuses, the U.S. should consider blockading the Hormuz at the Gulf of Oman to stop Iranian oil exports. His view, Washington should not accept Iran's sole control over Hormuz, but also cannot realistically exclude Iran from the strait. Haas says the war has made a return to pre-war status quo impossible, and the U.S. has lost the war in a strategic and political sense. Separately, he calls on Trump to pressure Israel to stop what he describes as a discretionary war in Lebanon. Knock it off. He suggests Trump tell Netanyahu. Trump, of course, is only listening to the first part of this conversation and deciding to lean into that, and not the second part of the conversation that requires him to literally tell Israel to knock it off.
Most dependent on the passage through the strait. I would bring China into the equation because it has influence, obviously, in Trump. But we need some type of a governing authority that dilutes Iran's ability to decide who gets to use the strait. And if we can't get that, David, I would favor a blockade. Again, open for all or closed to all. Brilliant. Including Iran, and a blockade option in the Gulf of Oman.
Even if you get to a governing authority that we all agree to, it sounds like Iran's going to have a say. They're going to have a seat at the table.
100%.
It's not clear they had that before. Is that really a step backward? Because it used to be an international waterway.
You're right. And there's no return, though, to the status quo ante. I think Iran has discovered that it has more leverage than it ever quite realized before. I don't think we can walk this back. So we're going to have to bring them in. So yeah, we're going to end up here and elsewhere, probably worse off than we were 5-6 weeks ago. What we want to do, though, is limit the scale of that. And I think, again, probably the wisest course here is not to do something to Iran, but to do something with Iran, to give Iran a stake in an open Strait of Hormuz. And I think we have a chance to achieve that, but probably only if we have the pressure.
What are the chances that Trump has to file shit on him, and that's the reason why he's like doing whatever Israel wants? Is a question that if you were to ask me, like, I don't know, like a year ago, 2 years ago, I'd be like, dude, come on. Bullshit, right? I'm not gonna lie. At this point, it is so unsustainable and so transparently idiotic what Trump is doing at the behest of Israel, like so clearly, that I'm no longer gonna sit here and act like that's not a concern. Okay, I don't know what is going on. This goes far beyond boomer philo-Semitism, far beyond like loyalty, ideological loyalty to Zionism. It is it's obviously completely outside of the realm of like American foreign policy and its interests, like converging or diverging with Israel's. I mean, paired up with the whole like Melania statement, it does kind of feel like Israel is just, you know, teasing a little bit, maybe. I don't know. I can't. It is truly, truly insane what Trump is doing right now. It doesn't make any sense. Like, what Trump should be doing right now is a strategic retreat away from the region, lean into whatever Iran's demands are, right? And then saying, look, like we definitely up. We took an L. It's fine. You know, we're gonna gracefully exit this area, and we're gonna double down on our ambitions in our own backyard, right? Like that kind of thing. The Don Road doctrine. Like, look how easy it was with Venezuela. Because this doesn't make any sense. This is so crazy. This is so much worse than Vietnam. Like as far as like how big of a defeat this is, how public of a defeat this is, what kind of impact this has had globally. Because Vietnam was in Vietnam, right? And Cambodia, Laos. But overall, it was like over there, it didn't have this kind of major impact on the rest of the globe. This is such a different and way more public defeat than I don't think many Americans fathom. Like, I think a lot of Americans are just sleepwalking through this process, as they always do. They're totally oblivious to exactly what has taken place in the last 40 plus days. You obviously in this community have seen it. You've heard my commentary on it. You have experienced it in real time. But most Americans, like if you talk to your coworkers, I feel like they probably don't fully grasp how bad things are. Okay. Yeah, I don't think Americans understand how much of a crisis this is around the world. They're crying about gas prices. Meanwhile, the rest of the world has like 1 to 2 months max. Yeah, I don't like, I think Americans look at this and go, oh man, we're taking a big fat L at the gas pumps, right? Taking a big fat L at the gas pumps. This sucks. But you know, at the end of the day, we're fighting terrorists or whatever, right? Like I think the average American's assessment is like, I don't know, they're brown people, they're scary, they say to America, Trump is up. And maybe we're not like, you know, maybe we haven't achieved our like victory condition, but like my gas prices are bad. I don't want him to do this. And now I'm increasingly believing that, you know, he's doing this just for Benjamin Netanyahu, just for Israel. I think that's like the median voter's attitude on this issue. What is actually taking place, however, is a spectacular blow to what has made America the global hegemon, right? Without the American Navy, without free commerce and free trade taking place on all seas across the board, guaranteed by the American naval assets, America's hegemonic status is called into question. That's number one. Number two, petrodollar is taking a major hit here, which has played a formative role in when tied with the naval assets and forcibly opening all the seas. Is the reason why the dollar is the global reserve currency, which has given America tremendous benefits, right? We can dominate our enemies when we see fit. We can design tremendous sanctions and cripple entire markets, cripple entire countries like we've done so to Iran, many others. All of that goes away. When all of that goes away, what does America have? It's just a fucking belligerent country with a bunch of nukes, with 800 military bases that look a lot like 800 separate military incursions, okay? This is something that I have talked about quite a bit when America was deciding to move away from soft power and going only in the direction of hard power, but I never thought that it would be this bad. I didn't realize that, like, defense contractor bloat and you know, American power projection, force projection capabilities would be this diminished in comparison to a country that we've been able to destroy economically, right? I don't think Americans understand what that world looks like. I don't think they recognize that. I don't even think most Americans understand that we're losing and getting our ass beat in the Strait of Hormuz by a country that we've designed as an enemy for no reason, right? We're in it. We don't recognize it. Most people don't. It will get so much worse. I'm telling you right now, it's going to get so much worse. In intensive talks at the highest level in 47 years, Iran engaged with the U.S. in good faith to end war. But when just inches away from Islamabad MOU, we encountered maximalism, shifting goalposts, and blockade. Zero lessons learned. Goodwill begets goodwill. Enmity begets enmity. It's Goat Talk with Sayed Abbas Araghchi, Foreign Minister of Iran. The war is not about... Oh, wait. Dylan Saba says, yes, it would be rational for the U.S. to make the necessary concessions for a deal now and totally foolish to continue the war. But that was also the case on February 27th when the available deal was more favorable to the U.S. than as it is now, where the key issue is... Because then and now... The key issue is ballistic missiles in Israel. Ballistic missiles with strike capabilities of hitting Israel, okay? That's been the number one thing that Israel wants to destroy, right? It's ridiculous, and no country would say yes to that, by the way, and Iran certainly saw that as a non-starter. The war is not about nukes or enrichment. It's about Iran's force projection and Israel's project of regional hegemony. What would need to change is not U.S. assessment of possible military outcomes, but U.S. willingness to disregard Israel. So far, we have no evidence of that. Yes, I've been saying this since day one as well. I agree with this analysis. Until the United States of America says to Israel, we're not going to find a reasonable conclusion here. So it's more so about how much pressure will America withstand from the global energy crisis that it has created? How much pressure will the American government withstand from capital owners that are definitely calling him and freaking the, you know, because they're experiencing asset loss, sometimes like, Amazon warehouses, Amazon facilities are being blown up, data centers are being blown up in the Gulf, and also obviously the inflation the inflation and the loss of energy transit that will significantly deteriorate manufacturing for goods and parts that are necessary for American producers all around the world. Because remember, all that is going to China and Vietnam, India. These are the manufacturing countries, and the manufacturing countries are getting most of their oil from the Strait. So when they can't get necessary resources, then all of a sudden they can't manufacture the goods and the components necessary for global manufacturing, right? Like, people are not factoring this into the equation at all for some strange reason when having this conversation, when Trump tries to make it seem like this is a you problem, right? He'll be like, oh, well, we got all of our oil. We got all of our needs met. All right, but you don't make shit. You don't make anything. What do you think happens? What do you think happens when, sure, you got your oil needs met, you got your gas needs met, but you don't have any components necessary for American production, necessary for the goods that are coming into the United States of America? What happens when there are shortages? It's not true. It's not even true. We get like 20% from there. Yeah, I mean, we also still get, yes, it's a global commodity, and it all obviously impacts. Even though we're an exporter, we still get some oil from the Strait, if I'm not mistaken. But it doesn't matter. That's like, you can make up for that with overproduction, okay? You can even make, in the short term, more money for American oil refineries that will now kick into high gear the thick Venezuelan crude, thick crude from Venezuela, right? And that's probably what's happening right now. Donald Trump has talked about it, as a matter of fact. Oh, all these empty oil tankers are transiting. They're coming to the United States of America. Now we're going to be the sole oil exporter. What did I explain to you, though? What did I tell you? Yes, America has light from fracking, but now it has thick crude from Venezuela. But listen, what I told you was, we do not have the refinement capacity, even with the Venezuelan thick crude coming to U.S. refineries. We currently, as it stands, do not have the refinement capacity to keep up with 20% of the entire oil supply coming from the Strait. Okay? We don't have it, and we will not have it. There is no way that we will be able to make up for the loss that the rest of the world has incurred. A loss that they don't even need to experience, a loss that we brought about to the global energy markets. Okay? Yeah, it's the fertilizers, helium for MRI machines, etc. It's not just about the oil. There's no replacing those things from other parts around the world. That too, yes. Trump, we are mobilizing our ships, and we have a huge fleet that we're moving to the Strait of Hormuz. The blockade will be similar to what we did to Venezuela, but at a higher level. I want everything. They have no cards. Farr says Trump joined Team Iran. The U.S. president, by threatening a military blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, dashed analysts' last hope for a drop in oil prices. Senator Mark Warner, I don't understand how blockading the Strait is somehow going to push the Iranians into opening it. I don't see the connection here. IRGC Navy Command says any misstep by the enemy in the Strait of Hormuz will place them within a zone of mortal danger. Remember, that threat is also very real. They are coming into striking distance as well. So in order to implement a blockade, they have to be in striking distance of Iranian ballistic munitions and Iranian drones, right? So I don't even know how they are going to do this without having their naval assets get bombed and experience laundry fires. American destroyers will start having laundry fires over and over again. You know, wasn't enough that we lost so many aerial assets, so many fixed position radars. Now we got the Navy to contend with. Now we're going to lose naval assets too. Laundry fires, question mark? Well, it's a joke, chatter. I'm saying that it is, that's like what happened to USS Gerald Ford, or at least that's what they claimed. All right. So, yeah, U.S. Central Command announced Sunday it will begin a blockade of all maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on April 13th, following the collapse of peace talks in Islamabad. CENTCOM said it will not impede freedom of navigation for ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz to and from non-Iranian ports. The blockade will be enforced against vessels of all nations calling at Iranian ports on the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, which means any ship that actually transits through the strait, because currently they have to pay a toll to Iran, will be blocked by America. Okay? The other thing that he's also talking about is blocking Chinese tankers. Iranian oil tankers that are transiting through the Strait of Hormuz unimpeded and sending tankers of oil to China. The announcement comes hours after Vice President J.D. Vance left Islamabad without a deal after 21 hours of negotiations. It's unbelievably stupid. That's who Donald Trump is. He's an unbelievably stupid guy. So let's take a look. Now that we looked at Richard Haas's analysis as well, let's look at two different things. One, Danny Citrinowicz of Atlantic Council. He's critical of this deal, critical of this move. He says there are no easy fixes on the Iran problem. Efforts to curtail Iran's oil exports would almost certainly trigger a sharp response from Tehran, most notably attempts to disrupt or shut down traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Such a move would send global oil prices soaring with immediate and far-reaching consequences for the international economy. A naval blockade, often discussed as an alternative, is no silver bullet. It will require U.S. forces to operate in close proximity to Iran's coastline, significantly increasing their exposure to risk. Iran's geographic scale and military capabilities mean that sustaining such an operation would demand substantial and prolonged allocation of American resources. More importantly, there is little reason to believe that blockade would force Iranian capitulation. If anything, Iran's demonstrated resilience thus far suggests the opposite, that it would absorb the pressure and respond, potentially through kinetic means, in order to reassert deterrence. You're literally putting more targets in striking distance that have the American flag on them. Iran would love that opportunity. That's precisely the reason why the IRGC has kept saying, come closer, please try to transit some oil tankers through the strait. I promise, we'll let the tanker go through. We just won't let your destroyer go through. So that's what Donald Trump is seemingly invested in doing. It doesn't make any sense at all. The likely outcome then is not a decisive breakthrough. Economic pressure on Iran would intensify, but so too would the strain on global markets and regional stability, particularly given the centrality of the Gulf to global energy flows, which raises an unavoidable question. If this approach were truly decisive, why wasn't it pursued earlier, which is the absolute best question to ask here, because it wasn't a good idea. Because Trump, it seems, didn't put a lot of thought into this at all, and because he's run out of options, he probably heard Richard Haas say it and was like, oh, well, this seems smart. Why not? Well, now let's hear what Donald Trump had to say to Maria Bartiromo on Fox News this Sunday.
Well, we're going to be blockading. It'll take a little while, but it'll be effective pretty soon.
Oh, the full Maria Bartiromo interview is the next? Okay, let's watch this first, and then we'll get to Maria Bartiromo then.
Begin with some breaking news. The U.S. President Donald Trump has just posted on Truth Social warning Iran.
Got him.
It read, Iran promised to open the Strait of Hormuz, and they knowingly failed to do so. This caused anxiety, dislocation, and pain to many people and countries throughout the world. They say they put mines in the water, even though all of their navy and most of their mine droppers have been completely blown up. They may have done so, but what ship owner would want to take the chance? There is great dishonor and permanent harm to the reputation of Iran and what's left of their leaders. But we are beyond all of that. As they promised, they better begin the process of getting this caps lock international waterway open and fast. Every law in the book is being violated by them. I have been fully debriefed by Vice President J.D. Vance, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner on the meeting that took place in Islamabad through the kind and very competent leadership of Field Marshal Asim Munir and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan. They are very extraordinary men and continuously thank me for saving 30 to 50 million lives in what would have been a horrendous war with India. I always appreciate hearing that. The amount of humanity spoken of is incomprehensible. The meeting with Iran began early in the morning and lasted throughout the night, close to 20 hours. I could go into great detail and talk about much that has been gotten, but there is only one thing that matters. Iran is unwilling to give up its nuclear ambitions. In many ways, the points that were agreed to are better than us continuing our military operations to conclusion. But all of those points don't matter compared to allowing nuclear power to be in the hands of such volatile, difficult, unpredictable people. My three representatives, as all of this time went by, became, not surprisingly, very friendly and respectful of Iran's representatives, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, Abbas Araghchi and Ali Bagheri. But that doesn't matter because they were very unyielding as to the single most important issue. And as I have always said right from the beginning, and many years ago, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon.
By the way, all of the conversations about the nuclear stuff is good. The reason why I say that is because, like, it's the one area where Iran actually made concessions on numerous occasions, both the JCPOA and certainly with the last negotiation that ended up with, Donald Trump attacking Iran. So the more Trump signals that that's a big red line, the better things are for reaching a manageable conclusion in this ceasefire. Okay? Because it makes me feel like that is being presented as like the big deal, right? So that there's a little bit of theater associated with it, so that it kind of feels like America fought the good fight and we're able to get the the major concession. It's not the major concession at all. Obviously, the major concession would be opening the Strait of Hormuz and no longer allowing Iran to control it. But that's not going to happen because Iran controls it militarily. So the idea that like the nukes are the real problem here is I think a way for Trump to hint at what he is trying to, what he is positioning as a solid W to the American public. Now, of course, given the current conditions, this will be infinitely worse than the JCPOA from the American position. I don't personally care that it gives some much needed economic respite to Iran. I think that's a good thing. We have been starving this country.
Donald J. Trump. Well, we are live in Tehran and Islamabad, where we start with our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett. Kimberly, I was reading that for the first time. You may have been hearing that for the first time. We know that obviously Trump was dialed in multiple times during the talks in Islamabad, but what do you make of this very, very long Truth Social post promising that the Strait of Hormuz needs to be open, that the international waterway must be opened soon and fast in caps lock, and obviously reiterating the American stance that Iran must give up its nuclear ambitions? Where do we go from here?
Well, we go to what I think is the second part of Donald Trump's very lengthy and long tweet. And correct me if I'm wrong, Neve, because I'm reading this in real time just like you, but it seemed to me there were two posts in quick succession. And the second post, or the first, I'm not sure which order it came in, but I believe the second, might be even more consequential than the first about the strait being open, because it starts out, so there you have it. The meeting went well. Most points were agreed to, but the only point that mattered, nuclear, was not. Leaders are dead, he goes on to say it near the end of it, in Iran, but he says Iran will not be allowed to profit off the illegal act of extortion. What he means is the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. They want money, and more importantly, they want nuclear. Additionally, and at an appropriate moment, this is key, we are fully locked and loaded, and our military will finish up the little that is left of Iran. These are the words I think are most consequential, because the U.S. president said very, very firmly before these talks, he said that if a no deal is reached, the military was loading up.
There's something very funny about being like, Iran, how dare you extort the world? Only we get to do that, which is why we're doing that now, okay? It's so funny. How dare you? How dare you think you can extort? This is extortion. Offering a toll off of your coastline that is a geographic choke point is extortion, which is why we will be doing that thousands of miles away from our shoreline, you know? An issue that we actually created. Once again, it's important to recognize that the Strait of Hormuz was open for business before Donald Trump decided to blow up Iran.
And would be ready to go. And so the U.S. president now has reiterated that. So this is the big fear that everyone had, is that this would just be a pause in fighting. But the U.S. president has indicated that he is ready to resume at a time and place of his choosing. So it's obviously going to be concerning, because this is going to have ramifications that go far beyond Islamabad. The fact that the U.S. president has reiterated his threat and says he is now going to carry out and finish the job of Epic Fury, the joint operation between the United States and Israel on Iran, that was started and only temporarily paused for the talks that occurred here and have resulted in no deal in Islamabad.
Kimberly, just give us a sense of the sentiment there in the wake of these high-level talks in Islamabad. Is there any perception whatsoever that there are avenues for further discussion, or is, at least when it comes to negotiations as they stand right now, have the shutters come down?
Until Donald Trump sent that post, there definitely was still the air of hope in the atmosphere here in Islamabad. Look at behind me here, or off to the side, I'm not exactly sure where in the frame the Serena Hotel is, but something historic occurred. Groups of people that have never sat face to face in decades, not since 1979, achieved that for the first time. That is being seen beyond Donald Trump as a major world diplomatic breakthrough. And we also know that there was rapport for the first time. We also know that there were teams that hung around after J.D. Vance boarded Air Force Two, along with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, to leave Islamabad. Those people were talking at the much lower level. And the hope
Indian media is blaming Pakistan for the peace talks failing. Oh, that's so funny.
This would continue.
Oh, that's
there would
amazing.
Be some sort of shuttle-type diplomacy between the intermediary, Pakistan, and that there would at least be able to, on the technical level, be discussions that would continue. But it's a real question now about whether or not that still stands, given the president's statements that have just come out. The U.S. president, again, making very clear, and this is something that's going to disrupt the oil markets and certainly cause energy to spike, is that he says that the one thing that mattered to the United States was making sure that Iran could never build a nuclear weapon. That was not achieved. So by all accounts, the U.S. president is saying this was a failure, even though everyone else saw the breakthrough in the discussion being a success. The U.S. president has drawn a new line saying that the U.S. military is locked and loaded and will finish up the little that is left of Iran. The threat can't be any more clear than that. And I expect that we're going to start to see the rippling ramifications, whether it's in the oil markets, whether it's in fear of escalation, is going to quickly ensue as a result of this post that really has spiked any sort of sense of hope that existed here up until moments ago.
Kimberly, we'll get the view now from Ali Hashem in Tehran on this. Ali, look, we are trying to put into context the latest Truth Social post from Donald Trump. You may have heard some of it from Kimberly Halkett there in Islamabad. It boils down to this. Trump says the US is ready to finish up Iran at a, quote, appropriate moment. We are fully locked and loaded. This, of course, off the back of a perception that the talks in Islamabad have failed. Give us a sense of what overarching message at least the Iranian negotiators are carrying back from Islamabad to their home country.
Well, the Iranian negotiators went to Islamabad saying and indicating clearly that there is a pillar of mistrust holding this tent of negotiations. And for them, what happened yesterday overnight for around 21 hours was the last possible attempt to reach a deal with the United States, though, as I told you, they went with a lot of mistrust, and the street here also holds a lot of mistrust. Now, given the fact President Trump's reaction, this is going to have its own implication also on the Iranians, because they took into consideration this is a ceasefire, this is not the end of war, and they've said this. And in the past, actually, they said they're not going for a ceasefire, they will go for an end of war, but this didn't happen. So now they're still controlling the strait. They are repeating day after day, hour after hour, that they're not opening the strait as far as the conditions they put for that aren't met. One of them is the issue of Lebanon and the ceasefire in Lebanon.
8 minutes, and it's up 9%.
Assets. Now, I think we are outside this circle now. We are in a different circle now, dealing with a new situation, actually an old situation that's being renewed. The threat of war, the resumption of war. For Iran, this would mean back to business just like last week, and then no one knows how this is going to reach a new station or a new juncture where there's the possibility to talk once again. You know, before the war, the main issues were the nuclear issue and the ballistic issue. Now, especially in the latest talks that took place in Islamabad yesterday on this dawn, the main issue was the Strait of Hormuz, an issue that wasn't on the table even.
Yeah, because it wasn't an issue at all. That is an indication that America has lost. America had a lot more leverage in the initial negotiations process, a lot more leverage, right? And then they chose to blow their load on whatever Israel's desires were, whatever Israel's design was, and they not only lost all their leverage, but now Iran has all the leverage and additional things that Iran now controls. Spectacular failure.
A few weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, what do we make of the fact that it wasn't even mentioned by J.D. Vance in this final news conference that he gave in Islamabad? I'm sure there would have been more questions put to him about that, but it wasn't among the first that were asked of him. I mean, just looking at this Truth Social post by Donald Trump in more detail, this promise to finish up Iran at an appropriate moment appears to be contingent upon the Strait of Hormuz waterway being open and open fast. Donald Trump's words. Where are we right now when it comes to Iran's leverage over the Strait of Hormuz, and whether or not in any way a compromise there might help stave off Trump promising to finish up Iran?
Well, actually, it's now clear that the epicenter of this whole conflict has shifted from the nuclear program to the Strait of Hormuz, because the Strait of Hormuz has more direct implication, not only on this region, but on the world. The weaponization of the strait by Iran created a kind of a global energy crisis that is just accumulating day after day and reaching the houses, each house in the United States, Europe, and the whole world. At the same time, this is having more implications on the region. Iranians seem, till the moment, capable of closing the strait, or at least creating a situation of managed passage, just according to whom they agree with and they disagree with. And we've seen this even yesterday, according to the maps and the programs that track the Marines. So for the Iranians, they know very well that this is their asset right now, and that's why they are insisting on continuing it. And as we've been saying before, the new Supreme Leader Mujtaba Khamenei mentioned the strait for now a couple of times in two statements, and that's not only a, let me say, official decree. This is becoming for the Islamic Republic a religious decree.
And we begin this Sunday morning with breaking news on the war in Iran. President Trump announcing moments ago a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is beginning. Coming up in moments, President Trump will join me in an exclusive interview to give us the very latest on the war on Iran, as high-level talks between the United States and Iran have concluded with no deal. It was the first direct talks between the two countries in a decade, and the highest level talks between the two since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. The talks beginning on Saturday and lasting 21 hours in Islamabad, Pakistan. Vice President J.D. Vance was in Pakistan leading the U.S. delegation, along with Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, as a fragile ceasefire has been underway between the two sides since Tuesday, after President Trump agreed to give Iran 2 more weeks to open up the Strait of Hormuz or face further destruction. Now the president will implement a naval blockade on the strait. Here's Vice President J.D. Vance after the talks in Islamabad this morning.
We have been at it now for 21 hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
Joining me now live on the telephone with the very latest is the nation's 45th and 47th President of the United States, President Donald J. Trump. Mr. President, thank you so much for being with me this morning. I know that your time is limited, and we appreciate you making the time to explain all of this to our audience. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Maria.
Mr. President, can you explain to us what is going on right now with the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, we're going to be blockading. It'll take a little while, but it'll be effective pretty soon. And we had meetings yesterday. They, as you said, lasted 21 hours. That was a long meeting. We had some very, very good representatives, as you know, J.D. and Steve and Jared. So we were well represented, but we didn't get there on the important issue. They want to have nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. I've been saying that for 30 years. I would never allow that to happen before I was in politics. And that country will not have nuclear weapons. Most countries shouldn't be allowed to have, but that country will not have nuclear weapons.
Not Israel.
So, Mr. President, was that the red line there? Can you explain to us what went on in these talks?
Dude, Maria Bartiromo looks insane, dog. Every time I see her, she looks more crazy.
Did the United States ask of Iran, and how did they react?
Well, they reacted. You know, it was very interesting.
Yes, JD's on Ozempic.
They came in like they had the cards, but they don't have the cards. Their army, their whole military is obliterated. The whole place is obliterated. And, you know, as you know, levels of leaders are gone. They're literally gone.
I mean, this don't make sense, right? If that was the case, you wouldn't be doing a double blockade. You would reduce the number of blockades to 0, not double the number of blockades that exist in the region, right? Like, clearly, if the Iranian Navy capabilities have been significantly deteriorated, there'd be 0 blockades right now.
He's gone. The whole thing is gone. The whole place is gone. They have one thing that they can do. They can say, well, gee, we're going to put a mine someplace just a mine. We'll drop 1 mine, 2 mines, 10 mines. And that will, if you have a ship that costs $1 billion, you say, well, you know.
Where is this? I don't know why we have to condemn Trump's threat of destroying civilian infrastructure and a civilization if Iran's whole tactic has been targeting civilian infrastructure. Can I ban Neek Skit? Literally saying attacking civilians is wrong, man. Wait, what? Who do you think between Iran and the United States of America was targeting civilian infrastructure more and first and killed a ton more civilians? Look at the whole convo before. No. Answer my question. Who started the war? Through perfidy, which is, you know, illegal. Who started the war after a round of negotiations where the Iranians, before this war, decided not to, before the war started, decided to basically give in to all the demands. Condemn that as well. Okay, there's nothing else to condemn then. That was horrible. Doing war crimes first doesn't justify the other ones after. That's Israel's argument as well, and it's wrong. Dude, what are you talking about? What are you actually talking about? What is Iran supposed to do, buddy? Would you be fine if Iran blew up American military bases on the United States homeland? You know what I mean? Iran is implementing a blockade, which is perfectly reasonable for them to do so. And on top of that, they are implementing a toll system, which is not even a blockade any longer, but instead of a way for them to retrieve revenues that they've lost because America unjustifiably chose to sanction them. To say this in the eve of America also saying, instead of negotiating with Iran and allowing commerce to go through this strait, we're going to do a double blockade instead, is extra stupid.
I prefer not getting whacked by a mine, losing my ship, or damaging it badly, at least. And so that's a little bit of a thing that they can do, and that it's military might and military power don't do it, but, you know, it's extortion, and they're extorting the world. You know, we don't get our oil from there. We have so much oil. We have, and one thing you said, and I don't know if anybody heard it well, but we have boats pouring up to the United States. They'll be filling them up, and they'll be leaving, and they're going to be packed with the best oil you can get, light, sweet crude. They're going to have the best oil that you can get. But so that's interesting, and it's great because we have a lot of oil. We don't get any. I mean, literally last year it was 1%. We did that as a favor. We don't need this strait. But other countries do. And I will tell you, while we're on the subject, we're very disappointed with NATO. We're very, very disappointed that they didn't come. Now they want to come and they want to help with the strait, and it won't take long to clean it out. So we're going to clean out the strait, and they'll be able to use the strait in not too long a distance. But we had a very intensive negotiation, and toward the end it got very friendly, and we got just about every point we needed, except for the fact that they refused to give up their nuclear ambition. And that's the only point, frankly, to me. That was the most important point by far.
And I want to ask you about that, and I will get to NATO as well. But, Mr. President, you wrote on Truth Social this morning saying that we will begin the process of blockading any and all ships trying to enter or leave the Strait of Hormuz. And at some point, we will reach an all being allowed to go in and all being allowed to go out basis. Right. So tell us what you're trying to accomplish with this blockade,
all in,
sir.
All out. Yep, it's called all in and all out. There'll be a time when we'll have them all come.
It's so funny. He just like directly copies shit that he sees on his timeline. I mean, I guess it's cutting out the middleman in some respects, because in the past, like, what is this? Iranian MP who attended the Islamabad talks, America was not seeking an arrangement. Yeah, we'll cover that. Hold on. I know. In the past, you would have like FDD send the talking points to the White House, and the White House would like put it in their own language. Now they just copy and paste that shit. In the past, you would have a guy like Richard Haass have meetings with Trump's analysts, and then they would communicate these points to Donald Trump. Now he just sees it on his timeline and just like repeats it, and then it becomes official policy. Fantastic.
And we had meetings yesterday. They, as you said, lasted 21 hours. That was a long meeting. We had some very, very good representatives, as you know, JD and Steve and Jared. So we were well represented, but we didn't get there on the important issue. They want to have nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. I've been saying that for 30 years. I would never allow that to happen before I was in politics. And that country will not have nuclear weapons. Most countries shouldn't be allowed to have, but that country will not have nuclear weapons. Well, they reacted. You know, it was very interesting. It started off weak. They came in like they had the cards, but they don't have the cards. Their army, their whole military is obliterated. The whole place is obliterated. And, you know, as you know, levels of leaders are gone. They're literally gone. Khomeini's gone. The whole thing is gone. The whole place is gone. They have one thing that they can do. They can say, well, gee, we're going to put a mine someplace just a mine. We'll drop 1 mine, 2 mines, 10 mines. And that will, if you have a ship that costs $1 billion, you say, well, you know, I'd prefer not getting whacked by a mine, losing my ship, or damaging it badly, at least. And so that's a little bit of a thing that they can do, and that it's military might and military power don't do it, but, you know, it's extortion, and they're extorting the world. You know, we don't get our oil from there. We have so much oil. We have, and one thing you said, and I don't know if anybody heard it well, but we have boats pouring up to the United States. They'll be filling them up, and they'll be leaving, and they're going to be packed with the best oil you can get, light, sweet crude. They're going to have the best oil that you can get. But so that's interesting, and it's great because we have a lot of oil. We don't get any. I mean, literally last year it was 1%. We did that as a favor. We don't need this strait. But other countries do. And I will tell you, while we're on the subject, we're very disappointed with NATO. We're very, very disappointed that they didn't come. now they want to come and they want to help with the strait, and it won't take long to clean it out. So we're going to clean out the strait, and they'll be able to use the strait in not too long a distance. But we had a very intensive negotiation, and toward the end it got very friendly, and we got just about every point we needed, except for the fact that they refused to give up their nuclear ambition. And that's the only point, frankly, to me. That was the most important point by far.
Tell us what you're
Remember, absolutely the worst possible person to ask about anything that took place, not only because he wasn't there, but even if he was there, he would have still lied, obviously. I need you to understand, Trump is the least reliable party to genuinely comprehend what's going to happen next, okay? He does not know what's going on. He doesn't know what he's going to say next. He's an absolute lunatic. He has no idea what's happening. Yeah. U.S. will maybe strike back. Wall Street Journal. In the last hour, Hezbollah's bombed Nahariya and fired 2 swarms of drones at northern settlements. Hadashot Bezmen, 2 helicopters landed at Ishilov Hospital in the last hours. They're hinting at another security incident. Reuters, senior U.S. Official says Iran rejected demands to stop funding its allies across the Middle East, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and to halt uranium enrichment. IRGC, the approach of military ships to the Strait of Hormuz under any pretext is a violation of the ceasefire, and we will deal with them firmly. Israeli platform, the Home Front Command, is currently convened in an emergency discussion. Wall Street Journal says Trump and his advisor looking at resuming limited military strikes in Iran, in addition to the U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, as a way to break a stalemate in the peace talks. Dude, this is not how you do peace talks, man. This is not how you, like, we have to, oh my God. We only know hegemon status for like the last 50 years almost, certainly for the last 40, right? This is how we operate, where we're just like, oh, dude, we're having a ceasefire talk. Well, it's fine. You just during the process. That's not how it works, man. What a delusional way to operate. Anyway, Wall Street Journal, Trump and his advisor are looking at resuming limited military strikes in Iran in addition to U.S. blockade as a way to break the stalemate in peace talks. Awesome. According to officials and people familiar with the situation, Israel Hayom, 2 more soldiers wounded in battle with Hezbollah. CENTCOM's new blockade of Iranian ports begins in 16 hours. Reuters, futures contracts for Brent crude jump up to $102, $2.60 per barrel. U.S. crude hits $105.25 per barrel. Nice. We ourselves and totally ourselves in the process. Things are going spectacular. Things are going swimmingly well. Okay. I was watching the other clip that has like all the best notes.
Trying to accomplish with this blockade,
all in,
sir?
All out. Yep. It's called all in and all out. There'll be a time when we'll have them all come in and all come out, but it won't be a percentage. It won't be a friend of yours, like a country that's your ally or a country that's your friend. It's all or nothing, and that'll be that won't be in too long a distance. No, we're just bringing the ships up.
Not been following it as closely. Can you explain to those people why it was critical for the United States to go into Iran? Can you articulate what was behind that move that was so important for the U.S. to go into Iran?
Yeah, so easy. The easiest question you've asked me so far. They can't have nuclear weapons. They have nuclear. They want to enrich what they have. They want to enrich more. As you know, we knocked out with the B-2 bombers. Had we not knocked that out, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 1 month after we knocked out. In other words, had the B-2s, those beautiful B-2 bombers, totally obliterated their 3 sites. They have 3 sites. And they are now deep in the earth with, tons of rock. Now, that material should be gotten, but we have cameras on it. We have satellites with Space Force. That was one of my beauties, Space Force. So important. Beauties. But we're watching those. We're watching every single aspect of that area. They can't move without us knowing exactly what's going on. But it's deep down, and it takes a long time to get it out. It's an amazing attack. Had we not done that, they would have had, within 1 month from that date, they would have had a nuclear weapon.
Right.
If they had a nuclear weapon, they would have used it on Israel and the Middle East. Look, they went after 5 countries that were sort of neutral, I guess. I don't know how friendly they were, but they weren't in the line of attack. They dropped on UAE probably 1,800 missiles. They dropped on Saudi Arabia a lot, and they dropped on Qatar a lot. They dropped on Bahrain. They went crazy. And everyone was surprised. Actually, it was good for us because they all joined us immediately, at some point. I mean, they're either going to be petrified or they're going to join. They all joined, and they've been very helpful. All of these countries have been great, and Kuwait.
And this is the key point that I was getting to, and the reason that you feel they cannot have a nuclear weapon, because they will use it. And that's what I wanted you to explain to the audience.
Yeah, I think they would use it. And they'd start with Israel, and one weapon would, do damage like nobody's ever seen. Wipe it out, conceivably, big one.
Now,
wipe it out. They don't need more than one. And then they go after the Middle East, and then they'd eventually come years. Here. I've had to listen to them say, death to America, right? They say, death to America, death to Israel, America, the Satan, we will destroy America, death to America. Now, does anybody ever complain to you when they say that? I think that's a big step worse. Death to America. So they're allowed to say death to America. And what I'm referring to is, when I talk about civilization, it'll be much different because their military will be totally gone. It's pretty much gone now. But their military, look at their leadership. We have had regime change because the people we dealt with yesterday were, frankly, very smart, very sharp, very good, very good. I think they were smarter than the people from before, Khomeini and that group. Because look what it got them. Look what they're...
May Allah awaken the people and help them to see the evil doings of Israel and the United States.
All of their antics was spending trillions of... They spent
new soundboard unlocked.
All their money on weapons. We've destroyed most of those weapons. Mm-hmm. But, when I say about a civilization, it really has changed. It really has. But think of it. They're allowed to say death to America, death to this, death to... And I make one statement, they say, oh, such a big deal. Let me tell you, that statement got them to the bargaining table, and they haven't left.
That's so funny. Dog, you begged them to come to the bargaining table, and then you retreated because it was an insane thing to say. It's so funny. It's just like, this is upside down land,
Haven't left the bargaining table. I predict they come back and they give us everything we want. And I told my people, I want everything. I don't want 90%. I don't want 95%. I told them, I want everything.
Well, and what they
have
want...
no cards, Maria.
Yep.
They have no cards. Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone, totally gone. They have nothing. They have no ships. 158 ships are at the bottom of the sea. Good ones, new. The Soleimani, they had one called the Soleimani, was taken out by one of our Tiger Sharks, by one of our rapidly moving submarines. It's amazing. Our military is so good. Do you know our military is a 94% approval rating now?
Well,
Congress has a 14%. The media has a 12%. When I started, the media had a 92% approval rating. Now they're down to 14%.
Wow.
And I'm very proud of it because they're very dishonest. They fired at us one day at a certain asset that we have, namely the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, one of the beauties of the world, one of the great beauties of the world. They fired 101 missiles out of 100. These things are going more than 2,000 miles an hour. And out of 101 missiles, 101 were shot down like nothing and are now at the bottom of the sea, the remnants of them. Think of it, 101 missiles shot. In a short period of time, all 101 were knocked out. So we have the greatest military equipment. We have the greatest people. We have the strongest military in the world by far, and everybody sees it, whether it's Venezuela or what we've done with Iran. And when I read, the fake news talking about how well Iran's doing, they're not doing well at all. They're getting killed.
I mean, clearly he's seeing stuff, right? Because one question that I had always was like, are his handlers just like showing him successful strikes and convincing him that the situation is fantastic? He obviously is seeing the negative news coverage that is not even like negative news coverage really, but is just like accurately looking at the events and recognizing that America has not achieved any of its military objectives here. So maybe he saw the AI Lego videos. He's like, fake news. They're doing Lego videos. They're making me look crazy. They're making me look crazy. I don't like it. I've seen it. Everyone's talking about the Lego videos.
I could take out Iran in one day. I could take down in 1 hour. I could have their entire energy, everything, every one of their plants, their electric generating plants, which is a big deal. And I hate to do it because if I do it, it takes you 10 years to rebuild. They'll never be able to rebuild it. And the other thing you take out are the bridges. I took out one just to show them because they went public with a statement that wasn't true. They admitted it. I say, I'm going to take out a bridge. And I took out a bridge. And that was the end of that. Now they've been really behaving quite well. But in 1/2 of a day, they wouldn't have one bridge standing. They wouldn't have one electric generating plant standing. And they're back in the Stone Ages. I'd rather not do that. But I do believe they're going to come to the table on this because nobody can be so stupid as to say that we want to have nuclear weapons and they have no cards. They have no cards whatsoever. People in other countries are getting hurt. One of the things that most amazes me, though, the strait is for Japan, where they get 93% of their oil. You know that.
Yeah. I love that he's making it seem like he's doing them. He's making it seem like he's doing them a favor, like everybody else. Bro, you got to fix it. Okay. You had the opportunity to fix it and you decided, no, I'm going to further. If Japan wasn't one of the most countries on the planet right now, I'm sure they would have a strong response to these kinds of statements, but that's not the Japan. That's not the Japan that I know.
Japan. South Korea gets 45% of its oil. These people haven't helped us. I say, are you guys going to help? And, you know, we have 45,000 soldiers and 50,000, respectively, at those two places. 45 and 50,000 soldiers. We guard them and protect them. And when we want a little help, they don't help us. And when we wanted help from NATO, they don't help us. And we paid, I don't know if you saw, almost $1 trillion toward NATO in a very...
Yeah, why do you need help, bro? You're winning. I don't get it. Wait, there's another clip that I missed here. Do you believe the price of oil and gas will be lower before the midterm elections? Let's hear what Donald Trump had to say.
We agree.
So do you believe the price of oil and gas will be lower before the midterm elections?
I hope so. I mean, I think so. It could be.
Ooh, that's not great. You know what I'm saying? That's not. I hope so. You don't want to hear that from the president.
It could be or the same or maybe a little bit higher, but it should be around the same. I think this won't be that much longer. They're wiped out, man. They're wiped out. And
yeah, that was a couple hours ago. It's gone up $5 on both, so $10 on one actually. So this graphic that you're looking at was a much nicer graphic. So that's not the case any longer. Congratulations to Donald Trump. That was pretty cool. +10. Add +10 onto that bad boy. Okay.
You don't get a fair shake. You don't get. You know, we need a free and fair press in this country, and I don't even know why people would do that. Why would they say?
Quick update on the Strait of Hormuz says Clown Girl Autism. I've decided to also blockade it. So when you talk about the status of the strait, please say that it is blockaded by Iran, the United States of America, and Clown Girl Autism. Okay, you got it.
How